Meeting will be recorded and uploaded onto YouTube following the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded even if they are not participating in the meeting. This causes you any concern if you can let us know, and then we can do that for you. I ask you all to switch your phones onto silent for the duration of the meeting. The running order of the meeting will be that I will announce the agenda item. The planning officer will introduce the application with any relevant updates and provide a visual presentation. We will then call on public speakers to present in accordance with the public speaking arrangements. We then move to members and officers to have any points of clarification along with any technical questions. We will then move into the debate for members. And members may seek clarification on any particular points from officers regarding the application or on points raised by the speaker in the main debate through myself. Okay, so we start today with agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Andy Kendall, for whom Mike Stanton is substituting, and Councillor Sue Osborne is on leave.
Thank you very much. Okay, so item 2 is the minutes from the previous meeting. To approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of January and the 24th of February. Have members seen the minutes and are you happy for me to sign them? Thank you very much. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Any members have any items that are which is the best?
Yeah, item 6, which is the village garage.
Any further declarations of interest?
Yes, please. Chair, I have a disclosable pecuniary interest on item 8, because my employer has a contract with the applicant, so I will withdraw from the meeting at that time.
Okay, thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 4, public question time. I believe there are no public questions at this point. Okay, so we move straight into agenda item 5, which is the first planning application. Well, before we do that, actually, I'm going to bring forward agenda item 9, which is the planning appeals. Just have a quick update on the appeals so that we can hear them.
Thank you, Chair. For anyone who's not met me, my name is Nikki Hogan. I'm the area manager for the South and East team now. So just wanted to give you a quick overview of the appeal decisions that we've had since the last planning committee meeting. There's 4 decisions, they're all minors, they were all delegated. 1 was allowed and the other 3 were dismissed. So the first one, you're seeing the packs, Notts Farm, Dillington. So this was proposed for 1 dwelling. It was allowed on the basis that it was a sustainable location, on balance considering housing matters and so forth. The next one is the Elms High Street in Ilchester. So that is access to the highway. This was dismissed. Again, a delegated decision route. The main issues were heritage harm through the loss of a stone wall in the conservation area, which was considered unacceptable. And the third one is land at Dinhams. So that's a proposed new dwelling and demolition of some agricultural buildings. Again dismissed, again delegated. And the issue here was the isolated location of those dwelling. And lastly, the Forest Barn in North Brougham, demolition of storage building and 1 self-built dwelling to be erected, dismissed once again, delegated once again. The main issues here were the unsustainable location and the waste collection, which was 100 metres from the dwelling. So that was considered unacceptable to the council and the inspector. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for people? Thank you very much. Thank you, Phil. So we're going to move on to the first planning application, which is agenda item 5, which is 23/4/03051, outlined. Welcome from Farm, Hornsby Hill, Chatham.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Sorry, Rachel, can I just pause you for 1 second, because if we start before Stephen's managed to sit, you're going to take part. I'm just going to pause for 1 second.
Thank you. Sorry, got delayed by traffic.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This application seeks outline planning permission for the erection of up to 67 dwellings at Welcome Home Farm, Hornsbury Hill, Chard, with all matters reserved except for access. The application is a major application, and Chard Town Council has an objection, and therefore this application is being reported to committee for determination. The site has limited recorded planning history. Those on record predate the current local plan, so hold limited weight therefore in the determination of this application. So the key issues for consideration are set out in the report and can be listed on the slide. And we'll come into these in further detail later. So this is the location of the application site on the screen there, situated to the northeast of Chard. And the site sits to the south of the A358, where Hornsbury Hill turns into Vernon Road, which is the key route in and out of Chard. And members should note that the land sits within the identified eastern growth area of Chard, where residential development has been planned to come forward. I'll have a slide on this later. The site's location therefore represents a logical and planned extension to the town and is well related to existing houses and services. So slightly more zoomed in now to the site plan showing the site's immediate surroundings. So the site comprises undeveloped agricultural land, which is bounded by existing development to the north and the west, including established residential areas and a care home. More to come on the care home later, which is more recent than the map here. And to the south of the site is Chaffkin Road. Now onto the satellite image of the site. So this shows undeveloped fields to the east and the south, where the site meets the edge of the surrounding open countryside. And I've just included a call out here to show the care home under construction to the southwest of the site, which, as I've said, is more recent than the satellite image, but nonetheless important to show. And again, a closer view of the site, and again, where that care home sits in relation to the site. Next, moving on to some site images. And I've included a key plan to the bottom right just to show the location of where those images, those photographs have been taken from. So here, starting at the south of the site, the existing access to the field land parcel. So image 1 looks north from Chatham Lane towards the site, and image 2 there is the same site access but looking south and back at it from the site. So next, working around clockwise to the west of the site, image 3 is looking from the boundary of the site towards the care home, which is due southwest. And image 4 is one of the glimpses of development that fronts the A358 from the site, a 2-storey red brick building. Now moving on to the north edge that fronts the A358. Image 5 shows more glimpses of existing dwellings, which are detached and semi-detached properties. And image 6 shows existing farm buildings due for demolition. Image 7 is a view of the gate that sits along the existing hedge line due to be retained, which cuts the site in half. And now image 8 onwards are views from around the site. So 8 here is to the south, looking north from Churches Lane, which meets Shafton Road, and the junction is in the picture there. Image 9 is the entrance to Shard and Ilminster cycle path. The lane passing close by Chard Reservoir. And image 10 is the view southwest to the edge of the site, back along Shafton Road. And finally, now to the north of the site, image 11 is the location of the proposed access from the A358. And image 12 is a glimpse of that access again, mainly looking southwest down the A358 towards Chard. Here we have an extract from the adopted local plan proposals map for Chard, with the site outlined in red. Chard is identified as a primary market town, with several areas around the town highlighted for planned residential expansion under policies PMT1 and PMT2. Those areas are shown in brown on the maps. The application site itself is located within this expansion area, which the local plan identifies as the planned direction for the town's growth, generally eastwards, also known as the Chard Eastern Development Area. And so policies PMT1 and PMT2 support residential development in these locations, subject to detailed considerations. And I also just wanted to use this slide to introduce the Chard Eastern Relief Road, which is shown in yellow and black, the dashed line. The northernmost section of this road is to be constructed on land set aside as part of this development. It goes ahead. Now to the proposal. On this slide to the right is the illustrative master plan, which is indicative and provided to demonstrate that the site is capable of accommodating the proposed scale of development. The plan illustrates how up to 67 dwellings could be arranged across the site, with access taken from the north, from the A358, connecting into an internal road network. And development is shown as slightly higher density towards the northern edge, closer to the existing urban area. Existing hedgerows and debris belts are retained, alongside areas of public open space and sustainable urban drainage features, including the central swale, which runs down the middle between the Spine Road and the existing hedgerow for to be retained. Also shown on the slide is the access arrangement from the north, and so that's at the top left there. And that's a bit of a zoomed in view, also showing the tracking. Moving on now to the main themes of the report, starting with the principle of development. As noted, Chard is identified in the adopted local plan as a primary market town and as a sustainable location for accommodating new residential development. The application site lies within the Chard Strategic Growth Area, which directs housing growth to planned expansion areas around the town, including where the site is located. The local plan identifies Chard to deliver at least 1,852 dwellings, particularly given the council's 2.22-year housing land supply, where the tilted balance applies. And the site is well rated to the existing built-up area and meets the definition of a sustainable location under policy SS2 with good access to facilities and services. And finally, the proposal would deliver up to 67 dwellings including 35% affordable housing, making a positive contribution to local housing needs. So overall, it's considered that the principle of residential development is acceptable, subject to detailed considerations, which we'll come on to next. So next up, onto residential amenity. The key consideration here is protecting the amenity of both existing and future residents in line with policy EQ2. The site allows for generous separation distances with between approximately 50 and 67 metres to nearby properties, including the care home, A358 dwellings and properties to the south, well exceeding typical privacy standards. Existing mature hedgerows and tree belts provide strong boundary screening, particularly along the southern and western boundaries of the site. And any construction impacts will be managed through the CEMP, a Construction Environmental Management Plan, securing controls over noise, dust and working practices. So overall, officers conclude there are no unacceptable impacts on residential amenity. Moving on to quantum, scale and character. The site represents a transition from undeveloped land to residential development in an edge of settlement location, consistent with the planned growth chart. And the illustrative master plan demonstrates that the site can accommodate the proposed development without over-intensification. A sensitive townscape transition is shown with a slight change in density of development, depending on proximity to the northern urban edge or the rural southern boundary to accord with this. And it's considered that there's a localised landscape change, but the impacts are assessed as low and the site is visually contained overall. So just to continue, the existing boundary hedgerows are retained, providing separation too. Overall, it's deemed that an appropriate form, scale and layout of development can be achieved at the next stage, the reserve matter stage. Now onto ecology. To start with, the site has been subject to a full ecological appraisal, which identified a number of species on and around the site and within the boundary hedgerows, forming important ecological corridors. And a comprehensive mitigation strategy has been proposed. When necessary, protected species licences would be required before the development starts. And the scheme would need to demonstrate biodiversity net gain with the final metric at the next stage. Potential recreation or impacts on Chard Reservoir have been addressed through a financial contribution, and consultees raise no objection, subject to conditions and the Section 106 agreement. Now on to highways, safety and active travel. In highways terms, the proposal includes a safe and suitable access onto the A358 and appropriate visibility displays agreed with the Highways Authority. So in policy terms, the proposal complies with policy TA5. The level of traffic generation has been assessed and is considered acceptable, with no severe residential impact on the local highway network. The access is designed to address drainage considerations and constraints, and detailed drainage solutions for access and its interface with the public highway are required to be submitted at the next stage too, and that's through conditions and the technical. Importantly here, the development does not prejudice the safeguarded route of the Eastern Relief Road mentioned earlier, with land safeguarded and secured accordingly. And In addition, a financial contribution towards the delivery of the Chard Eastern Relief Road is to be secured through the Section 106 agreement. So overall, to conclude here, the Highway Authority raises no objection, subject to conditions and the legal agreement. So coming on to drainage and flood risk next. The site is located wholly within flood zone 1, so it's at low risk of flooding from rivers. The surface water will be managed through sustainable urban drainage system based strategy, including a central swale, as shown earlier on the illustrative master plan, that follows the existing overland flow route and an attenuation basin to control runoff rates. All dwellings shall be set with finished floor levels at least 300 millimetres above the model floor levels for added pavilions. And any remaining technical matters raised by the LLFA, the lead local flood authority, are secured by condition and will be addressed at the detailed design stage. So on that basis, offers are satisfied that the development can proceed, the proposed drainage strategy is deemed acceptable, and flood risk can be safely managed, subject to conditions which are set out in the report. Lastly, phosphates. Site sits within the Somerset, Levels and Moors Ramsar catchment, so therefore nutrient impacts have been carefully assessed. Phosphates arising from this development are fully offset through a mitigation package, and those include upgrades to the existing septic tanks and the use of sustainable urban drainage system. A shadow habitats regulation assessment and a nutrient neutrality assessment have been submitted and reviewed, and both ecology officers and Natural England have confirmed there would be no adverse effects on the integrity of the Ramsar site with the mitigation in place. And that agreed mitigation is secured through planning conditions and will be by the Section 106 agreement. Requirements of the habitat regulations are met. Finally, just wanted to include a slide to set out an alteration to the highways obligation as discussions have progressed since the report was published. And the amendment is in the form of a minor change to the obligation wording, which now reads as per the text on the screen. The amended wording reflects ongoing discussions with the Highway Authority and the Council's legal team to refine the timescales associated with the Section 106 contribution. And it clarifies the period during which the contribution is reserved for the delivery of the Chard Eastern Relief Road, while allowing flexibility for the Council to begin progressing alternative active travelling measures should it become evident that the relief road is unlikely to come forward within that time frame, which is set out as 8 years, summary of the obligations are set out in the reports, generally in lump sums, but triggers and details will be agreed as part of the Section 106 of the legal agreement. So, in summary, the line application for up to 67 dwellings has been carefully assessed and is deemed acceptable in principle. And that is considering the site's allocation in the local plan within the Chard strategic growth area, and also considering the lack of a 5-year housing land supply, which weigh in favour of the development. The quantum, scale and character are appropriate for the area, and concerns regarding privacy, ecology, highways, drainage and phosphates have been addressed through mitigation measures, including the Section 106 agreement and planning conditions. So, as summarised, the key issues raised are all deemed acceptable. Thank you. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Rachel. As we move on to the public questions, and we have no objections to support the petition to speak, so we move to the parish council, and I'd like to invite councillor Hattie. Thank you, councillor Hattie, you have 3 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon. I speak to you today as Chair and on behalf of Chard Town Council Planning and Highways Committee. This application has come before us multiple times, and on all occasions we have voted against it on many reasons. Primarily, our concern there with any development in the town in relation to the proposed relief road. We have all spoke against this many times, and there's a strong view against it from members of the public. Although it was raised at our last meeting that the developer has shown no commitment to pay for the road, which even brought into question how it would be ultimately funded. Other major issues were the fact that yet again it was a greenfield site as opposed to a brownfield site, and that the area is the habitat of a number of wildlife, including owls, gulls, bats and dormice. As I'm sure you are all aware, Chard has experienced some major flooding events in recent months, and this area is indeed prone to flooding, as I've witnessed this myself, and also, and importantly, the infrastructure in Chard. As a lifelong resident, I see how much the town has changed. With the lack of services and with many employers now closed, it does not seem appropriate to add another 67 households to it, which would worsen the situation significantly. I'm very grateful for the responses we have received relating to our concerns, but nonetheless, our concerns on all of these issues remain the same. For these reasons, I, on behalf of Chard Town Council Planning and Highways Committee, remain opposed to this development.
Thank you. Next, can I call Stephen Bainbridge, who is the agent?
Chair, thank you, members.
Press it again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for letting me speak today on behalf of the applicant. We'd also like to thank the planning officer who has worked with us through a planning performance agreement to get the application before you today. The application is for up to 67 homes, 35% of which would be affordable on a site that is located in your local plan. In addition, the application will safeguard land and a significant financial contribution to assist in delivering the link road. Funds would be provided for leisure improvements, enhancements to the Chard Reservoir Local Nature Reserve, education and the NHS. It would also result in a net reduction in phosphates. Despite significant opportunities to comment on the application, a total of only 5 objections have been received from the public. The only reason the application is before you today is on the objection of the Chard Town Council to this allocated site. Their written objection is on the basis of wildlife. Falsely stating that no wildlife survey had been undertaken. The site has been surveyed on numerous occasions and reports duly submitted for consideration with no objections from any relevant consultees. This attenuation is insufficient based on oversimplified rainfall calculations. All aspects of risk and drainage have been modelled in great detail and scrutinised forensically by the relevant consultees who have accepted that the information submitted for this outline application is acceptable. The Town Council suggests that 67 homes would significantly worsen pressure on services. The site is allocated and no evidence has been submitted of which services or infrastructure pressures would warrant the refusal of this planning application. Finally, they suggest that the application is at odds with the existing plans for the road design in Chard, which is simply not true, as you have seen. Overall, the reasons for objection simply do not stand up to scrutiny. The application was submitted in 2023 following public consultation and pre-application discussions, and we have worked with the planning officers and consultees to ensure that the application has 0 objections from any technical consultee. The council has a chronic undersupplied 2.22 years of housing land, and as of this month, Home Finder Somerset published that 3,529 households are registered in need of a home in the Somerset South area. The site and proposal can make a meaningful and positive improvement in this situation on land that this council has set aside for that purpose. Members, we respectfully recommend that you resolve this application in line with the local plan, the NPPF, the professional advice of your planning officers and all of the technical consultees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, we go to points of clarification or questions, and I'll start with Councillor C.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a few questions about the stages yet to come and whether we've got the conditions. My first concern is the cycleway and footpath access down in the southwest corner of the site. Given that it's adjacent to the safeguarded land for the Eastern Relief Road, which is likely to be a fairly main road and probably with a complicated set of junctions nearby. If we were to need to move the access to the east of it, to set it back from the junction, how does that sit with, are we just deciding the principle of access in that area, or are we deciding access as drawn on this diagram? Because it looks to me as though there might be a bit of a space need. We might need to move it a little to the east. And how does that get fixed? Because if it's a reserve matter, it should be fine. But I noticed there's a condition 6 on highway visibility, and that's what really triggered my thinking. You've specified in great detail what's needed for the vehicle access at the top, but you haven't got a similar level of detail on a pedestrian cycleway. I'm just a bit concerned with what I see. So that was the first question. The second question is, have we got enough land safeguarded for the Eastern Relief Road? And the third one is with respect to the heads of terms and that obligation 6. It refers to 10 years after the value of that bond has been paid. My concern is making sure that there is a realistic prospect of completing the road, because that's quite a tight time frame. And the way cash flow runs on sites, I'm concerned about when the actual amount has to be handed over as an obligation, because I don't want to stop the site being developed because of cash flow, because we're demanding a bond. So could you please explain a little more about that?
Thank you. I'm not sure if it's Rachel or Adam, but I'm going to take care of it. She prefer first.
Thank you. Can I defer to Adam for the questions on compatibility with the link road, Pete, so the safeguarded width?
Okay, so this is not safeguarded land that's in isolation. The adjacent site also put forward as part of one of 6 safeguarded land, and the distances that have been safeguarded do accommodate the proposed link road as being suitable for the classification of road it will be. So that's the 6.3 metre carriageway width, then cycleway, footways, and the adjacent sites. So the land is adequate, yes. Just going back to your first question about the cycleway then down the bottom corner there. Obviously, this application is in outline, and so the reserve matters detail of the internal layout, the footways, cycleways that you will be seeing if this is granted permission can be detailed at the reserve matters stage. The safeguarded land on that bottom corner as well, if amendments have to be made to any of the highway infrastructure at that time, then obviously appropriate highway works will be covered by road safety audits, technical audits, assessments and that sort of thing. So yes, if site amendments have to be made in time, then it can be done through the appropriate technical and legislative pathways.
Thanks, Adam. And just wanted to say a further point on the safeguarded land. So between this site and the neighbouring site, so you can see the orange fill, which shows the portion of the safeguarded land of the road on this site. Between the two sites, there's roughly 16 metres of width that's safeguarded for the road, and that's ample. So highways are happy that we can accommodate, that road on the land shown here, and probably actually with a buffer up to the hedgerow on the site. And so just wanted to add that on the safeguarding, the second question.
And the time of the contribution?
Yeah, sorry, so it was just to expand on an earlier point as well, in terms of obligation 17 in the systems, which is on page 35, so that does require the pedestrian connection at the bottom hand corner of the site. But the details of which will be sort of factored out through the one sort of process. It is indicated on this plan, and there are visibility displays covering the extent of the visibility display that will be required, so we're happy we've got enough information at this point. In terms of timing, again, that would be something that receives through the detail on 106. There will be a trigger for it to be delivered. There will be a trigger for us to give it back. Usually it's 10 years after receipt. So we may want to think about when we trigger its payment to align with the development opportunities for the site, but also to allow us the maximum time that we can to enable that for the charge relief rate.
Thank you, councillor Skeleton.
Thank you. Some of my questions have been answered, I think, but the Martin and I have been around this one a long, not this is planning application, but the Eastern Relief Road. And I believe that this council had a plan that each person that was going to build part of this around this road was going to provide a piece of that road. I don't think I was present when the care home gave away half a piece of road. So my reason for having the questions answered is the fact that I didn't realise that. So my question was going to be, why isn't the road going down the middle being provided by the person who's building it? They're building a road down the middle, but obviously if you've got half the road now, you have another half road. So it's not what we were told at the time. We were told that each development would provide a bit. My worry is how we are going to make sure that that piece of land is kept for road, and that money that you keep back for the road, and presumably you had from the care home, is going to be enough to build a road. If we ever manage to build a road in 10 years, and I've been doing this for 17 and we've not built anything.
Dawn, do you want to take that on?
Yeah, I'm not really quite sure the question, so I'll give a general explanation as to the situation for this site. There are a number of other sites that we are dealing with that pose the relief road actually through the site as the main central corridor for that site. That's not the case in this site because obviously the nursing home building has gone through first. The indicative location for the link road is in between the two land parcels. So what was agreed with the sort of nursing home was allocation and reservation of that land for the road. And similarly, that was the same approach that was being taken with this one. The difference with this is because it's residential development rather than a nursing home. There is a bit more, I say this with hesitance because the agents are the new audience, but there is a bit more financial leeway with residential development than there is with nursing home development. So there is also a financial contribution towards the cost of construction. But ultimately, that's as far as this development can go. There's nothing within the layout or within the HES terms that's set out on the list today that would restrict the future development of that highway link because the land is safeguarded, the land is reserved as a highway connection point, and there is a contribution being taken, but the contribution is proportionate for the area of land that's impacted on by this development. It would be unreasonable for us to request a contribution that is above and beyond what is reasonably necessary for this development. So we've pushed it as far as we can.
So based on your answer, can you tell me who is going to build that road? And why, if we've got two developments that are both given a piece of land and moving towards it, why can't it be built now? And who is going to build it?
It falls outside of the planning process, but I am aware there are several discussions happening with the housing department. Obviously, members are aware that the land's been allocated, they will be aware of the contributions being set aside for that development. So those discussions are underway, but it hasn't been agreed at this point, and it doesn't fall within the planning services remit.
Can I just ask if Adam would like to have any input on there, because obviously if Dawn is saying it doesn't fall within the planning, if it's between, I'm guessing it falls under highways.
Does, but like Dawn said, those discussions are ongoing about the processes involved. And at this point in time, there are no sort of concrete decisions being made. Those discussions are ongoing. And Dawn says it is safeguarded, it is in the local plan to provide that link through. And so, like we said, we've done as much as we can through this particular application for planning consent process to ensure that the relief road is still being progressed and discussions are ongoing.
Thank you, councillor Webb.
Yes. A lot, even longer than Jenny, the relief road has been muted and talked about. And, quite frankly, is there any intention, I make this question if I can, is there any intention to ever brief this committee and councillors on the relief road? Because it's been, I think it went in 1997 plan, actually. It then went in the 2006 to whatever plan. And we never get told what's happening, if anything is happening. So my question, first question, is there any intent at all? So we and the public, because we are, as ward members, get questioned on it more or less weekly. Is there any intention of letting us know what is happening? That's the first question.
Any other key, Adam?
Yeah, I can answer that one now, actually. We are, like I said, those discussions are ongoing. At the present time, because there's been no sort of concrete decisions made, there's no real benefit in having a briefing when all you can say is we're talking about it and we'll let you know what's going on. So I think, yes, in the future, a suitable briefing for members, town council, whatever, might be beneficial, but just not at this precise moment.
Can I come round that? I mean, surely it would be beneficial to know what the root of this is, because nobody knows that. Or some do, some think they do, and others, well, just try and guess, frankly. And then this has been going on for years, and it's just really not acceptable.
Thank you. I'm just going to try and wrap this up for the sake of the planning application, which is what members have to decide on today. So in terms of where the group is directly engaged on some of the sites that we've got applications for, that will be prescriptive when it comes to members. They're still being worked on. This application is almost the exception in that it doesn't include the link verbatim. It's split between the two land parcels. So it's a bit of an unusual situation. As Adam have said, that there is literally live discussions going on about this at the moment. There is a meeting on Thursday. So there is stuff moving in the background. And once there is a resolution going forward, certainly I'll be reporting it back to John in terms of members' interest for getting an up-to-date situation report on where we are with it and what's going to happen with it.
Can I ask a specific question? Sorry about that. I was firstly, the width of the land parcel, is that 7.2 metres, the two combined of the two corridors, or the 7.2 metres just the corridor on this parcel of land?
just the corridor of this parcel of land, and I think 106 from the opposite side requires a corridor width of about 8 metres.
Okay, and secondly, if I may, Chair, the entrance proposed for this site and the entrance proposed to the ring road, what's the distance between those two junctions, please? As this is obviously onto a main thoroughfare, as we've heard, and I just wonder how close they are, if the relief road, is ever built.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we haven't actually got the metre distance to hand, but it was a specific question we raised with highways before we brought it to members to make sure that if the access road was put in the location it's supposed to go, given where the access is for this site, can we have confirmation there's not going to be a conflict and that the accesses would work and they wouldn't hinder each other? The response we got back from highways was that the access in the location that's proposed for this site would not conflict with the proposed location of the link road.
Lastly, Chair, the sill. I've read that, I remember doing the local plan and I thought the only sill areas were the large developments, on the southeast, and all the rest of the oncoming sites after that, even within the plan, would be due to pay full sill. It appears that's not the case with this site, apart from a small parcel of land, which I presume is where they're knocking down the farmhouse. So is it correct that the local plan allocates this as a sill-free area?
Rachel?
Thanks, councillor, for your question. For the most part, the site falls within the Child Strategic Growth Areas I've mentioned, and that area is not subject to a chargeable sill rate under the adopted South Somerset sill charging schedule. However, there is a very small portion of the site which is liable for sill. It falls within the sill chargeable area under the adopted charging schedule, and there's a screenshot in the report that shows those two different areas.
Any further questions from members at this point? This is a point of councillor Well. This was brought up at pre-agenda when the briefing may take place. I was aware that it's Thursday and I did ask for officers to contact me on Friday to, if they can give me an outcome, but to at least give me an update so that we can kind of keep it on. Yes, Beth?
Yeah, can I just, the figure that's been put in against the cost of delivering the road, is that been based on today's costs, or has there any inflation been added to it? Because I know that if you look at the key site that we're trying to deliver in Crewkern, if you'd have started then to now, you'd probably end up with a footpath. So it's a case, how did you come to the figure that's been put forward?
So effectively, the costing was based on a requirement from the highway department in terms of cost per linear metre of the highway road. So that was given to us and then calculated with the safeguarded strip minus the buffer, because obviously if you've got 8 metres on one side, 8 metres on another, you're not going to need the full width of that. So it was a cost per linear metre provided to us by the highway authority.
So that's today's cost, not allowing, if this is supposed to go over 10 years, have you added any inflation?
There is no inflation added on the price because it's just the price we got given. In the drafting of the 106, I will pass over to legal because they may be able to add something more about inflation.
Section 106 agreement through which the payment would be made, that always allows for interest in BCIS or RPI. So that is calculated from, I think it's the date of the agreement to when the payment's received. So as we've heard today, it's the movable fees just to when the payment's received, and then the indexing is added. And then we also have another clause, if the payment's late, we add on the interest as well.
Yes, Mr. Kenton.
Thank you, sorry, I'm going to go back to the road. So can I ask, A, who is going to own that piece of land that's safeguarded for the road? And B, who is going to be responsible for building the road? Because we're going to have houses in a care home on each side of that bit of land. And we're going to say that if it's not built within 8 years, we're going to do something else with it. But who is going to build it? Because it's not going to be either developer. So I can just see us with a nice piece of grass going down and no road.
Adam?
I'm not too au fait with the actual terms of land ownership per se on the back of the agreement, but the surface of the road would be vested in the highway authority. So it would carry full vehicle highway rights, as I understand it. And because the contribution has been taken, then in time, as I understand it again, we have our major projects team who can undertake the sort of design construction works themselves, which is why we've taken the money, so the council has the money to be able to provide the road.
Any further questions? If not, I have one question for Adam. We keep saying in time with this road. Do we have any kind of idea of how long a project of this might take? My concern, I guess, is we have a timeline of 10 years. We've already heard it's been over 20 plus years since this has been in the plan. Are we setting ourselves up for a bit of a fall here?
I think this goes back to the comments earlier about the ongoing meetings and the sort of decisions being made at the time. And of course said there's a meeting on Thursday, so when further discussions and decisions have been made, then that goes back to what we were saying, Councillor Weil, about being able to provide a briefing. At the minute, I cannot answer the question on timescale.
So can I just check that we're being asked to make a decision today on how long to safeguard a piece of money when we don't know how it could take to provide the information to build the road?
Thank you.
Fine.
It's all right, you give me all the interesting questions. In planning applications, it's not unusual to take contributions towards certain bits of infrastructure. It is fairly standard to give the money back after 10 years if you haven't delivered what you said you needed to deliver with that money. Because the purpose of taking it is to reasonably compensate the impacts of that development. So what you're asking for has to be reasonable, has to be fair, has to be proportionate for the scale of the development proposed. In this case, for the planning purposes, because I'll keep on directing members back to the planning purpose, because it's the planning application we're making the recommendation on today. For planning purposes, the area of land where the Eastern Relief Road goes splits between the boundary of this site and another site. There is allocated land on the other site that's secured by 106 already to go over to the highway authority. There is areas of land allocated for this site to go over for highway allocation. And there's a financial contribution that's proportionate for the amount of land that sits within the red outline for this application. Insofar as the planning application goes, we have done everything as far as the planning application is able to ensure that the land remains available. There is a contribution towards it. There is nothing within this development that would preclude the delivery of that link. In terms of whether we're setting ourselves up for a fall, going to the point of the question, I think politically there is a lot of pressure on delivery of this link road. I think there is allocation of the land, so there will be the ability to deliver the link road, which would have occurred before now. And there is a financial contribution which has a clock ticking on the end of it, which is usually quite a motivating factor. So I think with all of those factors playing together, there is pressure and there are meetings happening, and hopefully that will result in progress on this matter. But so far as the planning application goes, we've pushed it as far as we can for the application, and we've ensured that there's nothing in this application that would preclude the delivery of that link road should it come forward. And there are a number of pieces now pushing towards its delivery, but it is a discussion that sits outside planning.
Okay, thank you. Before I come back in with councillor Will, can I just check with legal then? So within this planning application, 10 years is the maximum we could stretch holding this payment for, is that correct?
Sorry. It's, as Dawn has already said, the maximum that happens in most cases is 10 years. If we haven't spent a section 106 obligation contribution by then, it's usually requested that it's returned, or that's usually stated in the agreement. It is open to have different periods of time, but that has to be under the umbrella of what's reasonable. It also has to be under the umbrella as to what the developer thinks is reasonable as well, because we don't want this issue to collapse the whole application and for them to, for example, to appeal. So you have to have good reason to divert away from what Dawn's recommendation is to you if you want to change that period of time. And there's already been quite a lot of discussion, which was mentioned a few minutes ago. So at the moment, the proposal is 8 years for the relief road. And then rather than lose that money completely, which would quite often be the case, you've got a second alternative if for whatever reason the relief road hasn't been able to come forward in the 8 years. You've got a further 2 years for it to be spent on other transport measures which are created pursuant to this development. I think active travel measures. So that's a good thing because we quite often don't have a second option. So that's quite unusual. So that's a good thing. So as Dawn says, hopefully there's even more of a motivator now for the relief road discussions to proceed apace. But to answer your question directly, it is open to members to look at the Section 106 obligations and to make their own decision, having had regard to the professional advice that you've had.
Thank you, councillor Webb.
That very last point, I was going to ask if it is in our powers to change the 8 years to another figure. It's a condition, is it not, this 8 years? Therefore, could we, as a committee, say, no, we don't agree with 8 years, we'd like to have it in 10 years, which is the norm for these things. Is that within our powers?
I'll hand you back to legal on that one.
The bottom line is, yes, you can change it.
Thank you.
You've just got to be aware that you've got to have good reasons to divert away from the recommendation that the planning office has given you, number one. And number two, just be aware that we want to work in conjunction with the developer and the applicant. The planning officers have achieved some substantial progress in this application because the sum that's being put forward from memory is 491,000 in the region of that. That's a figure that wasn't on the table until relatively recently. So those are the two things that you should need to have in mind. You need to have, whatever decision you make has to be justifiable on planning terms. And we want to work hand in hand with the developer and the applicant rather than against them. So, but yes, the bottom line is that you can change those details. That's the final detail of Section 106 agreement. So it is open to you to state another period of time that's different.
Dawn?
Thank you. So I just wanted to put a bit more meat on the bones in terms of the timeframes and why the proposal for timeframes is for members. I don't think I want to get the change to the obligation on the slide just while we talk about it. So generally the standard is you receive contributions towards something, you have it for 10 years, you give it back if you haven't used it after 10 years because it clearly wasn't that necessary or relevant or required in connection with the development as being built out. The point for this was in 10 years' time, the agreement with the developer is that if we are not spending that money, then it will be going back to the developer. The alteration to the clause that we were proposing was that by year 8, if we know by year 8 there is absolutely no way this relief road is coming forward within the 10 years, then we have the ability to repurpose that fund to provide an alternative active travel link to the betterment of that development. So there is still a highway connectivity benefit to the proposal. even in the event that the link road doesn't come forward. So we consider that to be our safest position from a planning perspective. In the event that the strategic network for some reason doesn't come forward, there's still a planning connectivity benefit as a result of the proposal, which is why it's gone for 8 years in terms of specifically allocated to the link road and 10 years overall, but looking at active travel.
Okay, so can I just ask, I'm going to bring Councillor Curley in and then I can ask another question. I'm going to catch Curley first.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to play devil's advocate on that a little bit. I think a deadline is often very useful to actually get the development done. And I think that if perhaps we've been waiting 20 years, that perhaps there needed to be an impetus to actually get the money spent. So just to play the devil's advocate on that one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I was just going to kind of follow up a question along the lines of Councillor Well, is that if we are all thinking along 10 years and we're struggling with the 8 years, rather than lose this application or to get caught in the grass, I'm guessing there is a possibility that we could have a 10-year clause with a 2-year to then do on top of that to do the alternate travel afterwards. If that's something that could be written in the section.
I'm looking at legal, but I'm happy in terms of drafting that if at year 8 we know that the relief road is going to be delivered at 8.5, that we could have it as allocated to the relief road for 10 years. But at year 8, if we know it's not coming forward for the relief road, we would be looking at and investigating alternative sustainable transport links. But the limit of 10 years is what's been agreed with the OJ and with the applicant. And given it was a fairly late minute contribution request, we consider 10 years to be more than reasonable in this case.
Two responses. I think bottom line is this is something that Dawn mentioned to me when we were last speaking about this application. Yeah, the legal argument when you're looking at the round is that if you get be devil's advocate, perhaps slightly on the page of Councillor Curley, if you haven't managed to spend money on 8 or 10 years, then the legal test for asking for a Section 106 obligation, as Dawn said a few minutes ago, it's got to fairly reasonably relate to the development. And basically, what in layman's terms, it's got to be needed. So the argument is, if you haven't been able to spend it in 10 years, do you really need it? Is it direct? Is the impact strong enough there? So that's one answer. The second answer to what Dawn's mentioned, legally we can draft anything you want. So it's just up to you to decide when you want those triggers, whether it's 8 years, 10 years or 12 years, it's up to you. Having had regard to the points that I've made and the points that Dawn has made.
Thanks, Ashton.
Yeah, presumably the history of not developing this relief road is because they haven't had finances for it. But now you've got the finances in place to actually build it. Should it not be reasonable that this could progress within the 8 years? I mean, the history of it not happening in the past is because it was just an aspiration. So it seems to be reasonable to go with the recommendation of the
Okay, so let's start off the debate. I'll go to the ward members first. I will let you two decide who wishes to go first.
But actually on the actual development, I don't have a huge objection to it. So my worry is the road. My worry is that the road is will be in our hands, and that means the council's got to build it. So it won't be the developer's fault if it's not built, will it? And we've already started the clock ticking if the people who are building their care home have already given their hand in the money towards it. So I don't really have what else to say other than please, if we're going to have a development with the vital bit of the use of development road, because if it doesn't come out on the A358, what's the point of the rest of it? So this, I don't see why we can't just build it. And when we have the money, I would expect the council to be building that road. And if I'm still here in 8 years' time and they haven't built it, then I'm lost.
Councillor Well.
Thank you. Yes, on the application itself, and we've got a lot about the road and, we can go on for days about it, but, on the application itself, because of the lack of the, 5-year housing, 3-year housing supply, because of the, fact that it is within the, local plan as land to be developed, and the application itself is perfectly, feasible. And as long as the drainage, because it is a sloping site, a plan which will go in a later stage, I'm sure, come to us in a later stage. I can see no reason to object to this application.
Does anyone else wish to fight the debate? If not, I'm looking for a recommendation. Councillor Patrick,
Yes, happy to propose the officer's recommendation to approve, Chair.
Councillor Curley, or Steve, whichever prefers, or Ashton, you all hand at the same time.
It's just a point of clarification. Obviously, what was drafted in the report is slightly different to the way it's on the slide behind you.
So
In
this,
terms of the requirement of the obligation. So it's just confirming that the proposal and seconding is in accordance with the obligation as listed, or if there's any variation on that.
as proposed, I'm quite content with the recommendation from the officers, which is on the screen behind us.
Who was seconding, just so I can check, Councillor Seaver, are you happy with the wording? Yeah. Okay, so it's proposed and seconded for approval, can I show of hands for all of those in favour? That's unanimous.
Well,
Thank you very much. Okay, then move on to agenda item 6, which is the former Miller's Garage and Field to the rear south of numbers 20 to 42A, East Street.
It was last year.
So just give the officers a minute to, swap over.
Chair, is it possible to switch those lights off at the front? It's very hard to see. For most of the people.
Yes, I should have done.
I'm not going to stare. All the place now. So everything you have to do, if you want to sit on this back in, it's a nice get up going. You really want to struggle to understand. And you'll be on it. Yeah. It's the only way I know, I'm trying. I'm just got opportunity.
That's like a big. Because you will see the screen. That's like a. Just give me problem.
Not as long as I will speak for everyone else.
Yeah, it's all right, microphones need to come closer.
Okay, thank you, members. Thank you. Okay, so we will now be dealing with the former Miller's garage site in Freetown. I will hand over to Tim for the presentation. Can I just ask everyone if you can just lean forward, grab your microphones, and bring it as close to you as you can, so that both the audio system and the hearing groups can be heard much clearer.
Record, I just want to point out that Councillor Best has left the room as per his declaration of interest, just so that's recorded correctly.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a full application for the demolition of an existing showroom building, Miller's Garage, formation of a 67 space public car park, not 69, I'll just correct that now in the report, refers to 69 and 67, just for 67. The erection of 44 new dwellings, associated vehicular and pedestrian accesses, both from East Street, parking for dwellings, manoeuvring, landscaping, etc. So this is the application site outlined in red as usual. As I just mentioned, access is directly from East Street and includes a small part of the conservation area. There are fields further to the east, and there's a rugby club to the south. There's a public right of way that runs along the part of the eastern boundary of the site here. So this is the aerial photograph. You can see the dilapidated former garage buildings that I mentioned earlier on. And then Wyvern Court, which is partly within the application boundary and includes proposals to improve the provision of storage areas for that and to share the access with the proposed new development. Also clear on the aerial photograph of the trees that line the southern boundary, which will join the proposed car park. I've included this extract from the adopted local plan to show you where the red line boundary of the conservation area is. I haven't marked the boundary of the site, I've just put a cross to indicate where the site is, but you can see that the conservation area includes the dilapidated buildings I referred to and a small part of the southeast corner of the site. And then the boundary runs along the back of existing residential properties on East Street. This is a view into the site from East Street looking south. That's the former Miller's Garage showroom that is proposed to be demolished along with the other dilapidated buildings I referred to. You can see on this photograph that currently there are two accesses, the access to the former Miller's Garage and Wyvern next to one another. The proposal is to create a single access to serve both Wyvern Court and the proposed development. This is East Street looking west towards the site entrance and just by where the 30-mile-an-hour sign is, and aspect of the proposed development which is to be secured through one of 6 agreements is the provision of a traffic regulation order to extend that 20-mile-an-hour limit, which ends where the 30-mile-an-hour sign is, to bring it further into the town as part of the proposals for creating a safe access. This is looking the other way towards the site entrance, and the site entrance is there on the right-hand side where the yellow bollards are. And then I've got a couple of photographs from the junction itself, again looking east and west, just so you can see it from a closer position. This is the access road into Wyvern Court at the moment. Those are the back of the dilapidated garage buildings on the site. Then the buildings of Wyvern Court at the bottom. And then down into the site, looking up towards East Street, you can see the long line of garages and the state of the site, which obviously is both in disrepair and overgrown. And then the houses you can see here on the northern side of East Street. Then you've got the back of the existing houses on the southern side, which you can just about see behind those bushes. Then down into the site itself, looking across the site to the east, you've got some of the existing houses that adjoin the site of this along that left-hand side of the photograph. You can see here that how the site does slope. The slope is more acute on the northern side and then levels out to fairly flat where the proposed new car park is. is positioned. Again, within the site, looking up northwards to the site boundary, you can just bounce in Townsend, listed building here between these buildings here and the adjoining white building on the left-hand side, if you look at the photograph. Then the access will come in just where the cursor is, just to the left of the photograph. This is the public footpath that runs along the eastern boundary and adjoins eastern residential property. That's the wall to that property, and then the boundary site wraps around behind that, and then so the footpath moves away from the boundary of the structure. And that's looking south towards the existing industrial estate, and the front pub is further to the right in the photograph, looking south. This is looking in the opposite direction, up towards where I was standing when I took the photograph earlier. And you can just see the glimpses of those existing houses on each street behind the bushes and trees here in the foreground, which are outside the site boundaries here where I'm putting the cursor. This is looking across west towards the site. You can see the existing houses and development of Wyvern Court that I pointed out earlier. And there's the trees on the former strong southern boundary with the rugby club. So this is the proposed layout for the development. It's a mixture of 2, 3, 4 bedroom residential units. So I'll walk you through the development. You have a pair of 2-story semi-detached houses here, then a 3 bedroom, and then 3 pairs of 3-bedroom bungalows, so that's 6 bungalows. 6 bungalows, and then detached units, and then the apartments are 2-bedroom apartments, 9 2-bedroom apartments in the corner with a public open space to the south. And this part of the road will be shared surface. And then you've got, this is a design change that's made along with a number of others outlined in the report to the application when it after it came in. And this is a key building, which I'll show you an elevation of in a minute. Parking's position in the street scene. And then these are the proposed car park, the 67 space car park, which includes disabled parking spaces and electric vehicle charging points. Also, the provision of the shared access to Wyvern Court that I mentioned, and then these are the storage areas for refuse and for mobility. The photograph also shows the provision of a link for pedestrian cyclists through the development, which is a significant benefit of the proposal, the link into existing pedestrian links into the town centre. These are examples of the elevations for the proposed new residential development. This is the key building I referred to just now. Materials are reconstituted stone, a mixture of red and tile and clay roofing. This is the proposed bungalow, and you see solar panels that are marked on elevation. This is a typical pair of 3-bedroom semis, and then some more examples in the bottom corner photograph. And then this is the proposed 9 units of 2-bedroom apartments and on the bottom of the site. This is a street scene taken from the application submitted, and you can see the significant change that have been made to the design of the dwellings to address the concerns that were raised given the position of the site adjacent to the parking within the conservation area. This is the proposed new access to the development, including the marking of the visibility space, which, as I said, are possible. This is the increase in the provision of the 20-mile-hour speed limit, which enables the reduced visibility displays. Also, the hatching, where to allow for oversized vehicles and pedestrians. And refer back to that if needs, because I'm conscious there's quite a lot of interest in the proposed access. There's a section through the parts of the development, including the northern boundary, and there is provision for access into this area from East Street to enable it for maintenance. There is a retaining wall with a 1.1 metre fence proposed above it here, and that's shown on this cross section behind the 2 bungalows. And then similarly, the other section is behind the 2-story detached units, which I mentioned. I've included a couple of slides from the proposed landscaping because another significant improvement that was made to the scheme during the course of the application was the introduction of significant landscape provision, including hedgerow and new hedgerows, you see there's very little fencing. We've got a variety of different types of hedgerow planting proposed within the scheme. And this is the final extract from that plan. As you come into the development with these hedgerows planted in a strong green colour, and when they ornamental planting in the orange colour. So in terms of the key considerations, as outlined in the report, the proposed development is acceptable in principle in terms of the residential element, because the tilted balance applies, the site is in a sustainable location, is suitable for residential development and will help meet the significant shortfall in housing supply. In terms of the public car park, there is an extant permission on part of the site for a 50-space public car park, and there is a recognised shortfall in long-term parking in the town. In terms of housing requirements, the proposed development will provide 16 affordable units and will make provision that the developers indicate an intent to provide 100% of their units as affordable. And a viability assessment has been undertaken to consider whether the proposed development is acceptable, given that it's not, the applicant reported that it would not be viable to provide any contributions as well as providing the affordable housing. But given the fact in terms of the policy requires 35%, and which is in terms of viability, yes, it's clearly set out in the report that there is a clawback clause which would be included within the Section 106 agreement to ensure that all of the contributions, including the education, would be met if any of the units were sold as open market units. That's any of the remaining 65%, with the 35% reaching the policy requirement. In terms of highways, transport and access, it's recognised that the proposed access is far from ideal. However, there's significant changes and revisions have been made to the satisfaction of the highway officer such that can now be supported, including the provision, as I mentioned, of a Section 106 agreement requiring the traffic regulation order to extend the 20-mile-an-hour limit. In terms of design, character and impact on the heritage assets, the conservation officer has indicated that there will be a less than substantial harm to the character conservation area, and this has to be weighed with the benefits that I've outlined, and on balance is considered that the design and character are acceptable and appropriate for their setting. Whilst I'm on this point, I should mention the concern that's been raised with regard to the loss of green space. However, there's no policy designation to require the site be provided as public open space, and therefore it can't carry weight in terms of a consideration in determining application. Residential amenity, the proposed development makes satisfactory provision for residential amenity with adequate space between dwellings, and it's recognised that there are concerns about potential impact of cars causing noise. However, that has to be balanced against the existing noise that would be possible with the commercial use of the site. I've outlined the position with hedgerows and trees. The tree officer is satisfied to the recommended conditions, and the application makes satisfactory provision for ecology and biodiversity, and the local authorities satisfied that drainage and flood risk is adequately dealt with subject to the recommended conditions. I've previously alluded to the requirements of the Section 106 agreement, and in terms of sustainability, the site is in a sustainable location, and the developer has committed to providing solar panels and rainwater recycling, and it is considered to be a sustainable proposal, and therefore the application is recommended for approval subject to the prior completion of the legal agreement and the conditions set out in the committee report. I won't go through those provisions, they are in the report in terms of the authority being delegated to the head of planning in consultation with the chair and vice chair, where appropriate, to make minor amendments or variations to the 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we move to public speakers, and the first person I'd like to call forward is Pat Lowe. just ask you to bring the microphone a little bit close to you. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You're going to hear a lot about the idea of having a park on this field, I think. And I'll just say that a petition proposing that idea attracted over 1,500 signatures, so it's also a very popular idea locally. I'd like to say that as far as I can see, the site is not in the direction of growth for Crewe Cairn, as in the adopted local plan, which states that this should be adjacent to the development of the CLR site. It's also counter to at least 2 assessments of suitability of the site that were prepared for the former district council, both of which determined that the site was either not suitable at all or only partially suitable for development. Obviously, none of these were giving the right answer. One of these also stated that careful bespoke housing and design should be offered, and I don't really believe that that's what we have in this design or in this layout. The proposal will also counter to the wishes of the people of Crewe Cairn when they were consulted in connection with the emerging local plan, and they overwhelmingly said that they wanted all the open space within the town to be resolved. I think the situation has changed even since the preferred options document of 2019, when this was included, because we've now had, or are having up to 67 houses built at Goldbrook Farm, just up the road. There's therefore no need for this housing in this location at this time. In response to some of the ideas about moving the 20-mile-an-hour sign, please don't do that, because at least at the moment, some of the cars coming down East Street do apply their brakes when they see the 30-mile-an-hour sign. So that's good. If you move the 20-mile-an-hour sign, they'll still be travelling at over 30 miles an hour when they reach this entrance. The parking in Miller's Garage was intended to be an extension to Henley's car park. This is not, in response to the myth that there's going to be a massive rat run from East Street through to South Street, which I don't think is true. This may be said to be a sustainable development site, as you can walk to the shops, but the issue is much more to do with whether the whole of Crewe Cairn is a sustainable settlement, especially considering its character as a historic market town in a rural centre. It's going to be a historic market town without any open space in the town centre. I'm concerned that some of the information in some of the supporting documentation is not accurate. I read, for example, that work on a car park at Miller's Garage had not started. This is not true. 12 trees were cut down and work is deemed to have started on Miller's Garage car park to the satisfaction of the planning officers. And
Thank you very much.
I'd like to just clarify whether this is a greenfield site and only partially brownfield.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, can I please call Fletcher Robinson?
Mr. Chair, is my mind. Before I begin, can I just clarify, I'm speaking for CPRE Somerset, not for myself, thank you. CPRE Somerset agrees with the Town Council's statutory response. Most of this site has greater value to the town as open space. If this scheme is approved today, in our opinion, it will be a major lost opportunity for the future of the town. Why is this open space on this site so valuable? Because it is immediately north of the recreation ground. It could be a wonderful, good-sized park with benches connected to the recreation ground and near the leisure centre. The previous already approved 2018 planning application, 1800754, was a much better scheme. South Somerset District Council was the applicant. It was approved. That scheme could still be delivered, as the officer's report acknowledges. It would provide 60 useful car parking spaces for the town, only 7 less than this scheme. It would occupy either side of the vertical north-south roadway from East Street down to the recreation ground, but importantly, it wouldn't intrude into the currently overgrown open space to the east of it. We understand that funds were set aside for this approved scheme. If those funds have been appropriated to meet other pressing needs, that doesn't mean that they can't be found again in the future. Delivery of all of this already approved scheme could open the door for an acquisition of this field, for example, using compulsory purchase powers recently introduced by the government. Later, there could be an even more ambitious scheme extending the park eastwards into the partly wooded fields of the green wedge that comes into this location. It could provide a beautiful circular walk back to the town centre along the lovely footpath 3341 on its northern flank. At present, there is no accessible informal recreation space near the centre of Crewkerne. That's a major deficit for a primary market town. The town council has specifically asked councillors on this planning committee to consider the town in a more holistic manner and to refuse the scheme. CPRE Somerset respectfully asks this committee to be ambitious for Crewkerne and to refuse it. The loss of so much potentially highly valuable open space that would benefit the entire community outweighs the benefits of this small housing scheme and is a significant and demonstrable harm to the town, which disengages the tilted balance. For that reason, it should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I please call Hugh Blandy.
Hello and thank you, Councillor. My name is Hugh Blandy and I'm a resident on East Street in Crewkerne. I'm against this application for the following reasons. Recently, I've read an article posted on social media titled, "What is an affordable home?" written, as it happens, by the chair of this council committee, the vice chair of this council committee, Councillor Oliver Patrick. The article mentions a lack of public confidence for new homes due to the apparent lack of improvements to local infrastructure. The councillor goes into to list some figures on how money from developments is spent, suggesting that if the council better communicated this to residents, it would build trust back in planning. However, a factor that was not mentioned, which causes possibly the greatest loss in confidence from residents, is a blatant tactic developers use to gain permission for a project and once started, apply for amendments in order to lessen or completely get out of infrastructure improvement obligations. The same obligations that form the basis why the permission was granted in the first place. Look at the Crewkerne Link Road. It has been put back so much, most residents are doubtful it will ever come. The applicant has already said the infrastructure investment will be unaffordable. It would suggest that if permission was granted, there would most certainly be more amendments to come. I'd also like to clarify that this site is actually quite generous to say 90% brownfield and 10% greenfield. I mean, the other way around, apologies. It's generously 10% brownfield and about 90% greenfield. Going back to the traffic in town, I'd also like to object on the basis of the roads immediate to the site, East Street, struggle to cope with the current levels of traffic without adding 44 more houses and a car park with a blind junction onto East Street. This will also be detrimental to our surrounding roads, which are again congested throughout the day. All streets into Crewkerne are regularly heavily congested, raising pollution and lowering air quality in town. Adding to the traffic and losing so much green space in the centre of town will be a massive loss to all residents. This site forms a tip of a green vein that runs from the countryside into the centre of Crewkerne, adding to the health of residents, beauty and character of the town, and natural environment. The development of the site will set a precedent, and it will not be long before the other 5 or 6 blocks that form this green vein become developed. A massive loss to the town and all its residents. This space could be an enormous asset to the town, which is also quickly expanding. When this green space is gone, it's gone forever. What could be a really precious resource on the town will be wasted. Surely the plan discussed today has no positive benefits for the existing residents. It furthers loss of confidence in the council, and the 44 affordable homes it promises are a drop in the ocean compared to several hundred other homes being built around Crookham. The only winner of this plan is the developers.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I next invite Julie Chant?
I'm much shorter than everybody else. Thank you, Chair. I'm against this, but I do have a few questions and I'd like to raise a few observations. In August 2022, Scrutiny Committee at SSDC called in the decision to allocate additional funds to the original approved car park in the Old Millers site on the grounds of value for money. More recently, Somerset Council has declared a financial emergency, so the public would assume that all councillors now have an increased responsibility to ensure every decision they make is best value for money. The current application is clear. The new car park along the edge of Hennace will be pay and display, so the public will be charged to use Somerset Council's land. But I cannot see any details in this application of a charge to the developer for using an area under the car park for the largest part of their attenuation tank. So are councillors, so is there an agreed charge for the developer to use this land and pay Somerset Council, or has that not been discussed? Following the call-in by Scrutiny in 2022, District Executive met in November to consider the alternative options, which included option B, which was the land swap which allows houses to be built on this orchard. Minute 77 of that meeting clearly states that the adjacent landowner had confirmed the planning permission for the car park would be submitted separate to the housing. So the decision to approve the option B and the land swap made by district executive was based on two separate applications. So can the council please explain why we are now only seeing one application? And was this agreed by another committee, or has this just occurred without a committee actually making a final decision on it? And as there is now only one application, how will timely delivery of the car park be achieved, given that conditions are often varied or ignored, and without any separate application, you've got very little control over the timing of it? And I would also just like to say that the dilapidated buildings and overgrown site that was shown amongst slides is basically because the council didn't deliver the promised car park 10 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I invite Martin Turner.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, Committee. I'm Martin Turner. Crookham is already incapable of coping with the current volume of traffic at certain times of the day with this existing road system. Our house in Newland is some 350 metres up East Street from the access road to Miller's Garage. It backs onto, looking over the field. Stationary or slow-moving traffic builds up on the A30 from the roundabout at the bottom, past Miller's Garage access road, up to our house at certain times on most days, because the traffic on the A356 has priority over traffic coming down East Street on the A30. This is exacerbated during peak hours with school runs and travel to work. Contrary to the misleading item in an earlier transport statement, a substantial part of the traffic during daytime is heavy vehicles such as articulated lorries, tankers, heavy-duty tractors and other agricultural vehicles, together with the other through traffic, all trying to navigate the limitations of Crookham's roads designed from previous centuries, and market research would confirm this. It is not practical to have the vehicles from a further number of houses to the east of town at Miller's Garage, together with traffic from the proposed 69-space public car park, trying to access directly onto the A30 at East Street. This will cause very severe congestion. Such development should only be considered after Crookham has installed an efficient bypass system to resolve the existing inadequate road system with its high street bottleneck. The definition of sustainable development quoted in the town's local plan, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The proposed development of Millersfield negates this completely by taking away the ability to enjoy the benefits of the open space provided by the possibility of a park, as has been mentioned, in the town. As the last green space close to the town centre, this goes against this important principle. Inevitably, because we overlook the field, I will be accused of NIMBYism. But when considering the purchase of Newland, my late wife was assured by Crookham Council Planning Department that the field had been refused permission for development for many years, and this was not likely to change. My daughter, my grandchildren, and my partner and I live in Crookham, and that's the town's the reason I moved there. But putting my personal position to one side, or trying to, as intelligent, thoughtful, and I do hope caring people, how can we be here this afternoon discussing this proposal with so many obvious negative aspects? If the primary objective is to provide additional housing, that need is being met elsewhere in the House, which leaves the principal beneficiaries of proposed development as Messrs Stonewater and their shareholders.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pay the price.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to Councillor Maxwell, who is speaking on behalf of Crookham Town Council on one behalf.
Yeah, good afternoon, councillors and officers and everybody. Just for context, as you probably know, I was once a former district councillor for 12 years. And I was the chairman for this last 4 years of its existence. Today, I'm representing Crookham Town Council, as you said. I'm the vice chair of planning and highways on the council. I mean, the council has objected twice to this application as a statutory consultee, and I will go through some of those reasons in a second. I don't want to repeat what other people have said, but I do concur with what they've said this afternoon. And I think everybody can feel the opposition from the town to this application. I mean, Crookham's already got quite a few applications in and developments in place, putting hundreds more houses in and around the town. There's really no need for this particular development in the town centre at all. There's no need for these houses. They also impact the conservation area, and I would imagine, I think, are in contrary to your policy EQ2. But just briefly to canter through the reasons why we objected to it, the layout and density, number of houses, although it's been reduced, is still considered to be too many. Big issue here is the loss of the green space and ecological areas and the trees. And the desire to have a small town centre park is by far the best solution to this site, in everyone in Crookham's opinion, I believe. If this application went ahead, there'd be a huge detrimental effect on East Street, highways, access issues, traffic generation. There's also a lot of pressure on the infrastructure of the town anyway, in terms of the doctors and the schools. We just I don't think we can take any more houses that we have already got agreed in the meantime. So in all considerations, Town Council and CPRE have supported us this afternoon, are opposed to this application. And what I would like to request the committee to do this afternoon, in respect of local democracy and sound planning reasons, is to refuse this application, because there is no need or desire for it in the town. And that is it, because I'm not going to repeat what everyone else has said before. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I now call Dave Norris.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Dave Norris from Boone Brown, and I'm representing the applicant Stonewater, who's a social housing provider for the district. If I can quickly address some of the comments that were made by some members of the public. Firstly, with regard to affordable housing, well, Stonewater are a registered housing provider. They're one of the council's partners, and they're helping to meet the acute housing crisis within Somerset at the moment. Some people some of the speakers said there's no need for housing in Crewkern. I think that's okay. If you've got a house, but 44 affordable homes is really important. If you haven't got a home at the moment, you'll be aware of the council's housing need and the under delivery. Crewkern is a sustainable settlement. It's on the second tier of settlements, got all the facilities that you need. And therefore, yeah, the local plan considers to be appropriate. In terms of people like highways as well, and the recent approvals for sites outside of the town, well, yeah, that is a consequence of not approving town centre sites. You will end up with sites of greenfields, not brownfields, which are remote and people can't walk to facilities. This site is sustainable in terms of its location. People can walk to shops from it. So I think it's one of the sites when the local plan is being produced next time around that the local authority will be looking at. The sites to the east and to the south are protected green spaces. They won't be developed. This site is in private ownership. It's not open space. People can't access it at the moment. So, members, this is one of those rare applications where actually it's quite easy to list the benefits. Normally you're faced with greenfield sites where we're talking about the only benefit being housing. In this case, it's very different. But we do have 44 affordable homes, 100% will be affordable, secured in perpetuity. There is also an offer, this will be a local lettings policy, so therefore the people in Crewkern who don't have homes or adequate homes would have first dibs on the houses. So again, it's easy for people from outside to say these homes aren't needed, but this will meet the needs of people in Crewkern. Proposal will deliver a 69 space car park. It's actually 67 spaces, but 2 spaces are given over for the payment. This has been an aspiration for many, many years. Those members who are on Area West go back and down those value things and remember the amount of stick we used to get for not delivering car parks. And it's still an aspiration of the town council as far as we're aware. This is being given free to the council. The cost of that is 44 affordable homes for local people, which is a small price to pay for that. So yeah, in terms of the parking, it was always considered that the lack of parking in the town, particularly with the Waitrose as well, was kind of choking Crewkern as a place, and that people were being brought through the town centre and it was affecting visitors. This location of this car park will overcome that. People come from the east, we have to pull straight into that car park and not go through the very busy town centre. There's the improvement of off-site links. Currently, people coming down from Wadham or kids have to walk down East Street through the narrow part of the road there. Just a few other things as well. The trees on the boundary are being secured. The 20-mile-an-hour speed limit is being funded as well. And there are no objections for any statutory technical consultee on this. So I think this is real planning, delivering homes and a much needed public car park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we move to questions from members and officers and points of clarification. But before we do that, I'm just going to bring forward the 2 questions that came from the public question. The first one being around the attenuation pond. There was a question about it being underneath the car park, I believe, and was there any fee to pay for the council for the use of that?
I don't know, I can't answer that question. I don't have information before me, but the Leeds Local Authority has recommended that the application be approved subject to the conditions set out as before. And obviously the details would come out through the discharge of condition.
Okay. The second one was regarding a district executive decision that was made previously on this land, and I'll pass that one over. Vicky.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't know the history, it's before my time. In this patch, we can look into that further. I understand that there have been changes since we've become unitary. I think the main point really is that members are asked to consider the application in front of them and including considerations of the harms and the benefits of the application. So although I understand that there are concerns in that regard, we would need to look at the application as presented and make an assessment there. But I mean, I'm happy to take away and have a look and see if I can find some more information to report back to members for greater understanding, but it wouldn't have any reflection on the application itself.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, Steve.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm curious about archaeology. I think the conservation officer did an excellent job with the above ground. But I noticed that Somerset archaeology weren't down as a responding in the table of responses. I'm aware that the Somerset heritage record lists 49541, 46395 and 53799 as either on or adjacent to the site. And I also know that back in 2006, when we were considering Waitrose, there was a pre-application investigation done for archaeology because the position of the authority at that time was this was an area of high archaeological potential. And I also noticed that we've been obliging watching briefs and investigations on other sites immediately adjacent to this. So I'm a bit concerned as to whether we ought to have at least a watching brief level condition within there, but I can find no reference to archaeology in a sort of positive evidence way in the report. Southwest Archaeology were consulted. We can certainly add a condition. That's something we could look into. This is when the defendants were minded to approve the application. We can add an archaeological condition.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Brown?
Yes, can I be informed or about the local Crookhern plan as in regard to this piece of land? Is it listed as part of the green space of Crookhern, or is it not mentioned?
It's not mentioned. I've pulled up on the screen the extract from the local plan, the adopted local plan goes with that. And you can see it's white land, so it's not subject to any designation at all, whereas you've got the land to the north, which is clearly identified in green. But I think that's a nature area. The hatching to the right on this image is a policy designation from the previous local plan that ended in 2006, which identified that land for playing fields. My understanding is that that's not going to happen. But there is a provision. If I could go to another image. Members be aware there's a major development happening at Crookhern Key, and the Private Agreement for that development, which has been signed, requires the provision of public open space on 3 fields to the east of the site. So it's from this sort of pale green field, the one next to it and one beyond. So they will be provided as public open space through the Section 106 agreement established in the Crookhern Key Commission.
Thank you.
There's nothing for the site itself.
Any further questions? Yeah, Councillor Ashton.
Will there be access through this development to the 3 fields behind it? Are they immediately adjacent to this site? They're not, or is there another field in between? Yeah.
I'm guessing I didn't hear the answer.
Sorry. Thank you, Bob. No, there isn't a direct. The image I just showed you, there's the fields that are identified as the open space through Crookhern can get separated by 2 fields between this site and that area.
Thank you. Councillor Stanton.
Thank you, Chair. We've been told that it would be better to use this land for a park. So what would be the process? I mean, if we turn down this application and if the planning inspector on appeal also turns it down, by what process does it then become a park?
You'd have to go through compulsory purchase.
I'm just a little bit concerned that that's not a relevant question for this application. So the application that's before you is the one we're going to make a decision on. If there was an alternative application for another use, we could determine that, but that's not actually what's in the moment.
Exactly my point. Thank you,
Councillor Lynch.
In fact, Councillor Stanton raised the issue that I had, which was, it sounds a very nice idea to have a park, but who's going to pay the owner of this site And that's not clear. Thank you.
Again, that's not the application.
If there are no further questions, we can move into the debate. Who would like to start off? You want to ask Ashton as a board member?
Yeah, my reference it's on highways really. Although East Street becomes a car park regularly because highways have consistently refused to consider one-way Market Street and therefore traffic from the east just queues up on East Street. I don't know how much relevance we should consider or how important we consider that this access will just be blocked a large percentage of the time because the cars are simply stationed in front of that site. It's rather like the other side, Brookland in Waitrose, where quite often you have to wait 10, 15 minutes to actually exit Waitrose car park because of that gets jammed up because of Market Street. I know that's not an immediate concern for this development, but it does contribute towards the whole of the Crewkerne jamming up in the middle of the town. It's not a safety issue, it's not a visibility display issue, but it's just adding to the fact that Central Crewkerne becomes a car park very many times. Because highways just has not moved forward on creating a one-way system through Market Street. And I'm not sure how I put leverage on highways to actually do that, but it's certainly, this is just going to contribute to make matters worse.
Adam, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I think it might be beneficial perhaps if I just give you an idea of the situation with regard to the traffic and highways as we looked at it for this application, which might sort of explain a bit of the situation we're in. So the site as it currently stands has Wyvern Court, it has the Miller's Garage, it has those accesses, existing access onto East Street. It has extant permission for a 50-space car park. So that's the baseline that we assess this application from. So, okay, there's 44 new houses, 23, 25 vehicles in the peak hour. So, yes, this is why I think you'll remember from the website and our documentation that we raised concerns about this development originally. Because we felt that the information provided by the applicant hadn't answered the aspects of what happens when this traffic and the intensification over and above that could already use this access arrives on East Street. Further work was undertaken by the developer, and the bottom line is that the access can be created to current policy standards with regards to visibility, geometry, visibility when you extend the 20-mile-an-hour limit, geometry, constructions, widths, and this sort of thing. And the retained width on East Street still accords with the national direction from Manual for Streets. Now, that's the situation we were in. So purely looking at this case on its own merits, we were then not in a position to maintain or sustain any formal objections. On the back of all that is, we are also aware that the development east of Crewkerne to put in the long-awaited link road has a legal agreement in place where they've got to provide that link road within 4 years or whatever it is in the legal agreement. They have that obligation to provide that road. So we have to assess this application bearing in mind all of those things and the fact that the new link road will hopefully do what it's designed to do and take traffic away from the middle of town. And obviously you add into that, all developments these days have to provide travel plans to reduce the use of private vehicles. Have to look at active travel. This one's putting in new links onto the public right of way, that sort of thing. So with all that in mind, the existing traffic issues on East Street, we felt were not going to be severely exacerbated by this development.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I go on to the next person, I just want to go back to Tim because we found the archaeology answer for SPC.
Yes, thank you for drawing that to our attention. Apologies. Yeah, we did consult Southwest and they did respond, and the conditions should have been included in the recommendation. There's a programme of works in accordance with a written scheme of investigation and condition requiring ensuring completion of works.
You were next on my list, so Councillor Steve.
So Chair, does that form part of the officer's recommendation that will be?
Yes.
So if approved, that would be added on to the conditions.
Those two additional conditions.
That's clear.
Thank you, Chair. I think the thing to say about this particular development is that we desperately need social housing. And I think that has to be my first point. I've listened with great interest and actually great sympathy to what a lot of the residents have said. And I think that there is a valid argument to a lot of our rural communities do feel overdeveloped at the moment. The infrastructure isn't keeping us. Yet, despite those sympathies, I've heard absolutely no material reason that we could defend against an appeal. So I'm afraid to say, despite those, I think I'm going to have to vote to approve this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a second question. Sorry, change colour. How do we absolutely ensure this development doesn't go ahead and forget to deliver the car park? Because that would be the whole reason for its being, the land swap and everything is to deliver the car park. Can we do the same thing as the Chard development and say, take the money from the developer for building the car park that's set to be used if the developer doesn't build the car park?
Tim.
The section 106 agreement can require the provision of the car park, perhaps prior to occupation of a certain number of the place. And if the developer is proposing to build the car park, so we can tie in through the legal agreement to make sure it's within it.
The reason I'm concerned is that there have been a number of similar developments from the same developer which have not been completed to the original spec and taken it up in areas in Ashlands where the houses weren't built out. And so they've got a history of not completing things. I just want to make sure we're absolutely sure that this car park will be delivered. And I'd like to see it delivered before the houses, actually.
Members could take a view on that, but I mean, the legal agreement will require the delivery of the car park in terms of if the members want to make a resolution in terms of being more precise on what the requirements are, that's within their gift.
Just going to come to legal just to clarify that.
Yeah, I just concur with what Mr. Marsh has told you. The legal agreement's perfectly able to put triggers and timings in. So I don't know what is currently envisaged, but if you need perhaps you might need a steer from members as to when again, with regards to viability, quite often the timing of things affects what the developer can afford. So you might want to leave it to the planning officer in conjunction with the chair of planning to firm up the exact timing, but certainly the legal agreement can then reflect that and be very strict. So quite often, as an example, we will have, just give you a random example, 75% of the affordable housing has to be built before 25% of the market housing can be occupied. So we're very well able to get that timing in. As to the precise timings in this particular case, as you've probably taken the planning officer by surprise, my suggestion would be that he liaises with the chair of planning in order to firm up the detail on that.
Yeah, so I think we also have an example on Ted Wemby on the CLR road, which was changed, I believe, by the AMA. And that sort of slipped through their timing of their delivery of the Hall Road. So we just want to make sure that doesn't happen.
An even better example we quite often have is no occupation of any of the houses until X, Y, and Z is done. So we're very, very able to do that. It's just, with regard to the detail, probably, Mr Marsh would need to speak to the applicant, because with regard to the financial plans for the development.
Thank you. I would urge, if you're looking at putting a condition on there, on that one, that it is kind of given to the officer to speak to the applicant, and like this, agreement. What you don't want to do is put something on it that makes it impossible and then it ends up back here. Councillor Stanton.
Chair, anything on the traffic issue, I was very struck by the point that the access to the car park will allow traffic coming from the oval direction to turn straight into the car park and not have to go to the town centre. I always go into Crewkerne down the 356, and I'm always struck by the amount of traffic queuing from the left from the oval direction. So slightly relieve that problem. So if anything, there's an improvement, seems to be in traffic. Who benefits? People are going to live in these houses, so I'd like to put them with this application.
I've got a question first, please. Thank you. I'll come back to you for the proposals, give you the first option, but I'll continue the debate first. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted some clarification, if possible, regarding, because I used to live in Crewkerne and know this area very, very well. That there's a lot of traffic that heads down into Crewkerne and could block the access, but I seem to recall from earlier reference to a yellow hatching. I'm wondering if Tim, you could clarify where somebody mentioned some yellow hatching in the junction.
Adam, can you answer that one from the highway perspective? Would there be anything there?
This is the image, I think, very not yellow, but it's the visibility display marked in blue, and then the hatching you can see here, which now may want to elaborate on.
Yeah, all I can say is that, let's go back to what I was saying previously about 278 agreements, 106 agreements. The actual legislative process to get the access in will be done in accordance with road safety audits and full technical approvals and this sort of thing. So the width of the access can be provided to our standards with regard to geometry, width, visibility in the 20-mile-an-hour zone and this sort of thing. What I would just clarify is the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit would be covered by a traffic regulation order, which has its own public consultation. And obviously, because of that aspect, there's no guarantees either way that it will actually be put in. So members might want to consider that. But from our point of view, yeah, we were happy that that access could be put in to geometric and safety standards.
Thank you. If I may, Chair, I just, in terms of the common sense approach to this, I would have expected some yellow hatching on the A, which somebody helped me out. A13. Just to prohibit people from blocking ingress and egress from this site. Could cause major traffic, could have major traffic implications within my anecdotal experience. Have discussion. I can't focus on Chair. I'm going to comment on this.
As I say, if that comes forward as part of the road safety audit, that measures should be put in place to avoid queuing traffic, blocking entrance to the access, then yes, that's something that we can work with the developer on. We have done it so many times. There are yellow boxes all over the country, that could be a peaceful way forward of protecting that or keep clear markings or whatever. But again, there could be some way forward of protecting that access.
Thank you. Councillor Steve.
I think this is more common necessarily anything else, but I was amused to see how much text we've spent on visibility displays and cross-hatching and so on and so forth in this report, when the really obvious thing to have done would have been to actually just make the pavement wider so that it could have more space for pedestrians, and secure the visibility display and secure the ability to move vehicles on the line we want. Just a comment. I just think it's not been as well done as it could have been. I know that we've got to assess the application before us, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. If there are no further Adam?
Yes, if I may just come back on that, the curb line of the access on the southern side of East Street will be amended to provide better visibility, display, slightly wider footway, but while we are still retaining the width of East Street in accordance with the manual for street, so the whole, the environment there will be improved.
Thank you. This might be the final comment. In essence, I'm going to second, was it councillor Stan? Did councillor Stan second? Okay, I won't formally second it yet. So I just wanted to close my remarks by saying I think this is a very good scheme, frankly. Plenty of affordable housing. We've got a car park, speed forwards, no charge for council, utilities and public benefits. We have solar panels going on the roofs, we have air source heat pumps. It's quite unusual to see those things, and to be, for the applicant to be quite so candid about the delivery of those things. In this day and age, we've all seen global events falling before us. Being able to provide affordable housing is truly affordable. I think it's very, very important. I have heard the concerns of local residents, and I do have some sympathy with those. As I said earlier, I used to live in Crewkerne and know it very well. I'm not entirely convinced by the argument that this is the final piece of green space in Crewkerne, or open space in Crewkerne. I used to take my children to Binkham Woods, Happy Valley Skate Park, and of course there's a bit of open space in Bath Street as well. So I'm not entirely convinced by those arguments, but I am convinced by the affordable houses in Crewkerne on a scheme like this that provides considerable public benefit. So I won't yet formally second it, because I think somebody else wants to jump in.
Thank you, councillor Ashley.
I just want to clarify this system. So we're proposing this and will be a condition on 20-mile-an-hour speed limit being, but that's subject to consultation for the TRO. So therefore, it will be a condition that the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit as it is applied. Is that right? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've clarified this, but there will be a TRO that will go out to consultation. Depending on the outcome of that consultation, depends on whether the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit is removed. Is that correct?
Yes. So even if it doesn't, the permission would be granted, even if it isn't possible.
Two separate things. We're looking at the application. Yeah. The TRO will go out as a separate thing. The consultation that will be open to Crewkerne residents to consult on. And so that consultation is not dependent on this planning application decision is not dependent on the TRO outcome. I got that.
It is, but the TRO aspect is normally, in my experience, included within the 1 and 6 agreement. And the visibility display aspects are reliant on the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit going in. So if the 20-mile-an-hour limit TRO fails, that could adversely affect the ability to put in those visibility displays.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to move. Oh, I'm going to go to Councillor Webb, and then I am coming back to Councillor Stanton.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, listened with interest, and of course we all know this junction or where it's proposed junction, and we all know about the need for car parking, and yes, like an old friend this application, because as we've heard, it's been through area west or South Somerset a number of times, but the argument to say that, oh, well, traffic can come down and turn into this car park, yeah, that they will be able to do that. It will certainly help. They won't be able to get out.
Okay, thank you.
So that the traffic is, we all know, won't be able to access this site, and it's going to cause a big problem. And we've also heard about the need for affordable homes. Yes, of course, we all agree with that, and we all try and encourage that in this committee. But surely, within a short distance, we have the large key site going in, and that is a third of which are going to be affordable homes. So we can't say that the delivery of affordable homes in Crewkerne is limited, because site, well, anyway, the key site, is many hundreds of houses, a third of which are going to be affordable homes. So to say this is, essential for, the affordable homes for Crookhern, I don't think is a very good argument. So I think that the problems of this site are mainly the access and from the site onto the A30. As we've heard from residents, and we all know from experiences, you very rarely drive down there during the day when you're not stuck. Usually outside the entrance to Miller's garage for some time. And this is all due to the fact that the 356, is it, has access at the roundabout and lower down, and it stops the A30, and it's an absolutely ridiculous traffic arrangement, and this will make it worse. So I've got grave concerns about allowing anything to make the traffic with Crookhern, which is bad, even worse. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Well, because you've raised a couple of fresh points. I'm going to let Councillor Patrick come in, and then I am 100% going to Councillor Stanton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Well, I agree with you actually on the first point you raised about the road. As I said, I lived in Crookhern for many years. I bought my first house in Crookhern on a new build estate actually. The reason I know this is an issue is because my dentist, I'm lucky to have one, is on that road in Crookhern. Oh, unfortunately, it's called. Yeah, I'm terrible with names right now. It's just stressed to be English, Chair. Thank you. And I wait there for a long time until somebody lets me pop in. I do have concerns, ongoing concerns, but I am reassured by our highways man that this will all be audited as part of the road safety audit. And I think we as a committee need to pay special attention to that to make sure that allowances are made when we come to assessing that. I do, however, take a bit of an issue respectfully with Councillor Webb with affordable housing. Yes, there are lots of houses being built in Crookhern and across South Somerset. You don't need me to remind you of a terrible 5-year housing land supply, 2.22 years. I thought it was lower. It seems to be changing, but we are not meeting our housing targets. I'd also like to remind committee members of the Home Finder Somerset programme team, from which we get plenty of reports. And the latest one goes into quite a lot of detail in terms of housing demand and need in Crookhern. I'll give you one example, and there are many of them. There was a 1-bed flat that became available in Crookhern just before Christmas, and 389 people applied for it. Only one person got that flat. That's just one example. I could read you a very long list of houses becoming available in Crookhern, where hundreds of people apply for them. It's social rented homes. There is a demonstrable need and evidence-led case to be made for severe need for affordable homes. So that's why I'd like to second this application amongst other reasons, please, Chair.
Thank you. Stanton.
Chair, eloquently put this argument from Councillor Webb, even I laughed. But the reality, as you know, Martin, as a retired policeman, is that when you're trying to get out of a side road onto a main road, other road users, other drivers are very generous and let you out. That's the reality. Oliver's made the point very well. The people who aren't represented in these committees never are the people who need housing. So we have to act on their behalf. That's simply not we should have put some application.
Can I ask Councillor Stanton, are you looking to add any recommendations regarding the timing of the car park into that proposal?
I wasn't.
Okay, I'll come to Lee.
The two changes to the recommendation is firstly the archaeology condition, and secondly, with regard to the timing aspect, this is wording that I would suggest that section 106 must ensure that the car park is completed before the development is fully occupied. The detailed timing of that to be agreed by the Chief Planning Officer in consultation with the Chair.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Stanton?
I can't see it's necessary, but happy to go with it.
Okay, right.
There were two archaeological conditions. One was the route scheme had been investigated, otherwise it was completion of the.
Okay, councillor Patrick, are you happy with 2 seconds?
Yes, I'm very happy to, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So the application is duly proposed and seconded for approval. Can I have a show of hands for all of those in favour? Those against? 2. Those abstentions? 1. So that application is passed. I'm going to, before everyone starts getting up and making a bit of noise, I'm going to propose that we have a 10-minute break and come back at 4:35. Skipping the resident. Thank you. Okay. Do we have everyone? Adam, are you ready? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we now move on to agenda item 7, land north of Old Gate House, Portway, Langport. And I will hand you over to Owen.
Good afternoon. Is that good distance?
Yeah.
So the application is an outline application with all matters reserved, safe access. The erection of up to 22 dwellings just west of Langport on land north of Old Gate House. Most members will be aware that 2 months ago, on the 24th of February, the planning committee had this application before them and voted to accept the recommendation of the case officer and the committee report we approved, subject to the completion of the Section 106 legal agreement. Although I understand not every member here today was at that meeting, so this presentation will try to provide coverage and so the main impetus for this application returning back to committee today is a change in the contributions. So the education team have sent a letter to the planning department advising that they no longer consider the contributions that they had requested are necessary. So therefore, the committee resolution is recommended to be changed. Although the committee previously voted to grant permission, the committee today is not necessarily bound to that decision, although one might expect the same outcome. For clarity, the committee report and the first addendum that were before the committee in February are unchanged. This current update takes the form of a second addendum. So hopefully that's not too confusing, rather than have one completely fully reviewed. Actually, I'll just say one thing. On the first addendum was about tree felling, with a slight correction, and the second addendum is about today and the change in the recommendation in relation to corporate contributions. So on the screen, there's a, what you can see, there's a
yellow.
I can see a blue line and a blue dot.
Okay, maybe I'll move on to the next one, see if that one's, So the application site is on kind of western outskirts of Langport. There's a red line there. As you can see, there's development already to the southwest, southeast, and north. With relatively suburban dispersed development. There is a road between, sorry, I should say, between Langport to the east and Curry Rival to the west, and there's a pavement along that road, and so this development will link up onto that road. The access is on the eastern boundary, as you can see on that red line, onto a sea road, but then within a few metres connects onto that main road at that junction. So there's more photographs of that later on in the presentation. This is of a block plan, as you can see the extent of the development around it. Bit more zoomed in. So the proposal is an outline application, meaning that other matters such as the layout and the appearance are resolved, and so don't form part of this application. Those details, although they're reserved, members will still need to be satisfied that an acceptable solution can be found for those matters in this application, and also that although the indicative site plan has been submitted, and will be shown in a moment, that is merely indicative and the applicant could significantly change that layout at the reserve matter stage. So it's just, don't take that as the final plan. This is the indicative site plan they've submitted. As you can see, the access is in the northeast corner. And the main road is along that southern boundary, but there won't be any vehicle access directly onto the main road. It will be via that sea road to the east. In the kind of eastern corner, there's a pedestrian access from the site onto the pavement. So the recommendation today is on the slide. And in summary, it's subject to conditions and the completion of the Section 106 legal agreement. And that's the same version on the slide as in the end of the second addendum. So the legal agreement would secure 35% affordable housing contributions and financial contributions towards local health facilities and local leisure and use facilities, as well as the installation, adoption and maintenance of an on-site package treatment plant, and that is to secure energy neutrality. So I'll just quickly run through the recommendation and the main issues as I did in February as quick as I can. So your principal development, access and highways, all those other issues that are mentioned in the report. I haven't got a specific slide on them in this application, but I can go into them members wish. The planning balance, and then I'll make a note of explaining why this change has happened to the contributions and the heads of terms. So the principle of development, the site's in a sustainable location within safe walking distance of local services. As I said, there's existing pavement that goes both westward and eastward. The application site is within 400 metres of the main built-up part of Langport. The Langport contains a large variety of services, including a library, supermarket, bus stops, village hall, pubs, GP surgery, etc. So it's a highly sustainable location. And this is an image of the A road immediately to the south of the site, where the site will connect onto that pavement. Just to repeat, there's no vehicle or no access from the site onto this specific stretch of the road, but it's at that corner as I showed in the site plan. Depending on whether you consider the site relates to Langport or to Portfield, which is a hamlet just to the immediate north of the site, that determines which policy of the local plan you would use to determine the application. In the office report, I explained our view that the site relates primarily to Langport and therefore policy SS5 applies rather than SS2. But I think there's a plausible argument either way. On the policy SS5, that involved directions of growth, which, as the officer's report explains, are very out of date today and were only ever intended to be temporary while allocations came forward. And unfortunately, those allocations never came forward. So therefore, the committees recommended to give less weight to those to that policy in particular. Overall, the housing land supply for the area is 2.22 years, and therefore the NPPF, as members will be aware, means that the paragraph 11D of the NPPF is engaged, so the so-called tilted balance. And so members should be assessing the application based on whether they think that the adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and also whether there's a particular clear reasons for refusal based on specific policies in the NPPF. So on access and highways, which is the only matter that is part of this outline application, with all other matters reserved, there's no objection from highways. A transport statement and a traffic accident survey was submitted. That raised no issues. And I've explained also the access of the pedestrian access. Part of what's proposed would be outside the red line boundary, therefore a grampian condition is recommended to be secured, and which the applicant has agreed with. So those kind of modest improvements to create a tactile crossing on that junction would be provided. In relation to there's this section in the new addendum about an additional condition recommended about access. I won't go into too much detail, but that's been recommended on this one based on legal advice that we given on a different case. But we can ask more questions about that if you have questions. So these are some photographs of the sea road that the access would come onto. This is looking northwards. So the site would be kind of to your back and left as you're looking at that photo. And that's the other 180-degree view, this photo. So the site's on the right side and side of the photo. And the access would be where those trees are. And the junction to the A road is straight ahead. You can see the road rises slightly. And this is the junction. So coming on to the reason why this has come back to the committee, the education team have produced revised estimates for school capacity, which they indicate that there's no longer a need for the contributions they'd originally requested. It's unfortunate the timing in which this letter was sent. Obviously, if the letter had been sent a few weeks before, it would have been better for timing for all of us. But as it stands, the local planning authority is unable to acquire this contribution if the advice we've been given if it's no longer necessary, regardless of whether the applicant decides to provide it or not. And that's based on section 122(2)(a), the Community Infrastructure Levy regulations, which say that obligations must be necessary to make the development acceptable. So just in summary, moving on to the planning balance and the conclusion, the proposal would have several public benefits, including 35% affordable housing, providing a new home in the context of housing supply shortfall, the off-site pedestrian improvements, and local economic benefits from employment during construction. In addition to those public benefits, you've also got mitigation in the form of SIL and of the financial contributions. So there's still some financial contributions that are being retained. No statutory consultancy objects to the development, which have been noted. So although the proposal would be contrary to policy SS5, as noted, low weight is given to that planning balance for the reasons explained before. And significant weight is given to the presumption in favour of sustainable development and tilt balance. So the recommendation to the committee is that planning permission be granted subject to the completion of the section 161 and the conditions. So the conditions would be as in the original committee report, plus the condition at the end of the second addendum. And the heads of terms for the legal agreement would be as at the end of the second addendum. And I'll just make one final point, which is that the section 106 agreement is at the stage of negotiation. And so, which is very surprising, but also pleasing. But so that should be ready fairly soon. Yeah, I'll just thank the people for their swiftness with that. That's it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we move to public speakers. We have no objectors and no supporters. We'll move straight to Stephen Bainbridge. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry that it is again so soon. Thank you for letting me speak today on behalf of the applicant. The applicant and I would like to express our thanks once again to the planning officer and also to this committee, who a couple of months ago, having discussed the key issues, resolved to approve this application. Since then, there have been no changes to the proposal or to planning policy at any level. The application is not before you today because the applicant is trying to renege on contributions that are necessary. Rather, we have been advised that the council must take this application back to you to ensure that your resolution to approve can be issued lawfully, meeting the legal tests for a section 106 agreement. Those tests require that all obligations are necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, directly related to the development and fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. As the officer's addendum explains, since the previous committee, the Education Authority has recognised that there is capacity within the catchment for children who would occupy the proposed homes. Accordingly, contributions for education infrastructure are now not necessary for its development acceptable in planning terms. The revisions that the officer has drafted will ensure that there is some flexibility within the heads of terms, which is always necessary for outline planning applications, and will ensure that the council can continue to secure affordable housing and financial contributions in ways that do meet the different tests. This means the site can deliver 22 homes, 35% of which will be affordable in a sustainable location, helping to redress the council's housing demand shortfall and acute need for affordable homes. It will deliver highway and pedestrian enhancements, economic benefits through the construction phase of patronage and local services, which are highly lookable, and contributions that do remain necessary, fair and reasonable for local leisure and facilities and allowing for GP surgery. There remain no technical reasons for refusal, and no harm has been identified that would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the significant benefits proposed, as is the relevant test. As such, members, we respectfully suggest that you resolve to approve this application again, in line with the professional advice of your planning officer and all the technical consultees, and support of 2 of the 3 local town and parish councils. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we move to points of clarification and questions. Ashton?
So we've had down to, this is the same application, but a reduction of, this could be primary school demands. I remember so it's correctly, we had quite a discussion about water emanating and foul water contaminating the ditches, but we've resolved that. Okay. Can we move to a decision relatively quickly here, please?
Okay, Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. Some might disagree with this, but I consider myself to be a reasonably intelligent person. I can't push the log. My head is spinning ever so slightly as to why this is back to committee. I think I understand the technical reasons why, but are there any plans afoot to make sure that this kind of thing can be seen off in the future? It looks like this is something we shouldn't really be at committee again.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Totally agree. And I'm sorry this has come for all before members again. It is something that we've taken some legal advice on, which is why you may notice that the resolutions, the recommendations have changed to include minor edits to the conditions and the obligations so that we can try to avoid this happening again. As long as it's captured within the report and members are clear on that on resolutions, we should be able to avoid doing that, and that can come via agreement with the head of planning to ensure that there's that sort of high level scrutiny. So that's why those resolutions look a lot longer to try to avoid this happening again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if you wanted me to wait until the debate, but if everyone else is happy, I'm happy to propose that we agree unless everyone else.
Okay, I'm getting lots of nods. So are you, Councillor Power, are you proposing the officer's recommendation?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I'll second it.
I just said before it's proposed, it's more memorandum to make.
Yeah.
Not everybody was here at every meeting. I wasn't on delay. There was objection from Curry Rutland Parish Council. Although this development fairly inside Curry Road, it's really attached to Langford, just over the Langford. So yes, it's a heavy challenge. The second Thompson person.
Unfortunately, Councillor Besser beat me to that, but.
Do you want me to find out?
If you'd like to take a fun fight outside, you can build up. If you're both happy with how it sounds, then we'll move to the. Get all those in favour? Is that unanimous? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen. I hope you brought as a. Let's go. Just going to give Oliver a chance to leave the room and for the officers to swap over. If we can all remain where we are, that would be much appreciated. The next thing, please. Well, whilst we're just setting up for the benefit of the people online, because I just asked if Melanie Lavender, who is the chair of the Parish Council, could make herself known if she is online. Okay. Yes. Have you said which team is getting involved? You have an hour. I would rip it. There you go.
The king will make it 100 now.
Oh, to be the judges. Sorry, guys. My name is taking it from bag of speech, got a share. Yes. Oh, no problems off, the munchies are out.
Jenny says no.
Each got each drink, sorry. Pass on.
You'll never be.
Okay, whilst the sweets are being passed around, we will start on the next application, which is application 24/01842 land north of Bradley Hill Lane, Somerton. And I will hand you over to Peter for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just the applications for land north of Bradley Hill Lane, Somerton.
Sorry, can I just pause for a second? I should, just for those who are online, just to confirm that Councillor Oliver Patrick, declared in some application earlier, had no left.
This is the planning application for residential development comprising 56 dwellings, landscaping, public open space, and trade provision. Sorry, yeah, that is fantastic. I'll say that again. So it's a residential development comprising 56 dwellings, landscaping, public open space, and trade provision with vehicular access across Bradley Hill Lane. The application is before members today because the town council object to this scheme. Also, the application is subject to a councillor calling by Councillor Stephen Page, and council is concerned about road and pavement provision. That's just the précis of the calling request, and full outline is provided in the report. Turning to the scheme itself, the site lies on the western edge of Somerton. It's bounded by Bradley Hill Lane and a narrow rural road leading from Northfields to the south. Somerton, the surrounding uses include Somerton Mean Housing Estate and Bankham Road Trading Estate to the south of the scheme, and to the east you've got King Ina Academy. Residential properties and vegetation to the north, and open farmland to the northwest of the scheme of the application site rather. The site consists of fields enclosed in hedgerows and trees, and a small woodland area to the northeast of the site. Views are largely contained within the existing vegetation and the surrounding development, and some longer views to rolling hills exist to the northeast. This site is not within a conservation area, has no nearby listed buildings, and lies within the flood zone wall.
Other planning policies, F51 and LMT3, identify Somerton as a local market town suitable for housing growth. I've included this slide just to indicate that the site, which lies just to the north of Barnton Road and northwest of Somerton, it lies outside the Somerton direction of growth. However, it does sit very closely adjacent to it. This is a slide really, it's very difficult to get access into the site, and I certainly couldn't get to the north and east of it. It's somewhat isolated. So this is just a shot across the site. You can see some open field, and it's enclosed by hedgerow there to the south and to the west. You can see a snippet to the north as well. This is the view of Bradhill Lane. I'm sort of stood at the point of access, or close to the point of access from Somerton Mead to the south. The intention is to extend Maple Drive, the estate road through Somerton Mead, across Bradley Lane and into the application site. This is me stood at Bradhill Lane looking into the Somerton Mead development. Across where Maple Drive will be extended. And this is a shot from Maple Drive looking back towards the application site. Full plan permission is sought for a revised scheme of 56 dwellings, reduced from 65, with associated landscaping, parking and open space. The revisions focus on the enhanced landscaping, particularly along the northern and western boundaries, to reduce visual and landscape impacts. The development would include apartments, 2, 3 and 4 bed houses, and is policy compliant with 35% affordable housing, which equates to 20 dwellings. The dots you can see along the south and to the east indicate the location for the affordable housing within the development. At the entrance to the site, you can see just to the west of the entrance the attenuation pond, and just to the southeast of that the local area of equipped play, locally equipped area of play. Sorry. Green infrastructure is integrated throughout the site and consists of a 10-metre wide green corridor, which you can see proceeding along with the north and to the west of the developable area, and to include native planting and a perimeter footpath, and helps to create a landscaped edge to the development. Parking is allocated to all dwellings, and level access is provided to affordable homes on the site as well. Overall, the scheme provides appropriate density, amenity and landscaping for this part of Somerton, and officers are generally very happy with the scheme. And we can see the access from Somerton Mead across Bradhill Lane into the application site, and the farther of the two pictures shown there. This slide shows the site access. As previously explained, the Maple Drive will be extended from the Somerton Mead development across Bradhill Lane and into the application site. Pedestrian footpaths will be provided on both sides of the carriageway. The carriageway will be as it proceeds through the development, 5.5 metres. The pavement for the pavement will be 2 metres wide. The junction itself is designed to prevent vehicles turning into the development or into Somerton Mead from Bradhill Lane. So access into the development itself will be via Maple Drive, proceeding through Somerton Mead and across Bradley Hill Lane, you'd not be permitted to turn into the application site from Bradley Hill Lane. That's achieved by design features within the junction itself. So, for instance, there's no radii, so even a small vehicle can turn in to the junction. The carriageway is very narrow, and there'll also be high curves to prevent vehicles turning into the development site from Bradley Hill Lane. And this site shows the surface finishes, so you can see the estate road proceeding through the development itself, and it's going to service a number of cul-de-sacs. The hatched areas will indicate shared surfaces in order to access those dwellings. The orange sort of loop shows a pedestrian route around the development, utilising this 10-metre wide landscape strip or landscape buffer as public open space. And the small orange loop up to the extreme south of that picture provides or denotes the pedestrian access into King Ina Academy School from the back entrance. This slide shows a mix of the house types, and probably the best sort of picture I could find to give some indication of what the houses might look like. So this is the street scene. Shows a mix of dwellings, a mix of terraces, semi-detached dwellings, and detached dwellings. The development is somewhat predominated by detached dwellings, but we think on balance is an acceptable mix of dwellings. Similar street scene showing both some landscaping and the house types as well. So turning to the key considerations, although the site lies outside Somerton's designated direction of growth and exceeds the local plan housing target for the town, the council cannot, as you've heard a number of times today already, the council cannot demonstrate 5-year housing land supply, currently at 2.2 years. As a result, the tilted balance is engaged. This means that planning permission should be granted unless adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Despite Somerton already exceeding its planned housing delivery, the proposal benefits from 35% affordable housing, it's 20 units, which carries significant weight given the acute housing shortfall. Overall, the principal development is considered acceptable, subject to compliance with other local plan policies. With regards to affordable housing, the scheme, as I've already said, is policy compliant, and officers are satisfied with the distribution of the affordable housing across the site. With regards to access, the development would be accessed via the extension of Maple Drive across Bradley Hill Lane. The scheme is supported by a transport assessment that demonstrates the site is in a very accessible location, and there's good accessibility by walking, cycling and public transport. The limited traffic generated by the site would not have an adverse or severe highways impact. The access arrangements and internal road layout is considered acceptable, and there's no objections raised by the local highway authority. The site is located on the edge of Somerton, so there would be some landscape visual impacts. However, the location itself, or its context, is considered to have a low to medium low landscape sensitivity. And whilst the development will urbanise that part of the edge of the town, the landscape visual assessment shows the impacts are largely localised and will reduce over time as the landscape matures. The in particular, the hedgerows that will be planted, trees, the 10-metre landscape buffer along the site boundary, and new planting, the suds, and the green infrastructure generally. The council's landscape officer agrees that the development would integrate well into its context and would not cause unacceptable visual harm. With regards to the ecology and biodiversity, the site is supported by ecological assessment, which confirms that the impact on wildlife can be satisfactorily mitigated through conditions. The proposal achieves the mandatory 10% biodiversity net gain, using both on-site enhancements and off-site credits. The council's ecologist raises no objection. With regards to drainage, flood risk and nutrient neutrality, the site is entirely within flood zone 1. Whilst there may be some low risk of surface water flooding, this can be satisfactorily mitigated against through sustainable urban drainage. The Leeds Local Flood Authority raises no objection to this aspect of the scheme. With regards to nutrient neutrality, this is achieved through the purchase of off-site credits. Regarding archaeology, the archaeological investigation and low heritage significance for the site, with no objections raised, subject to standard conditions for recording findings. And finally, on to the planning balance. Although the proposal conflicts with the spatial growth policies, these policies carry reduced rates due to the lack of a 5-year housing land supply. Significant benefits include the delivery of affordable housing, contributions to education, healthcare, play and community facilities, and the obvious sort of economic benefits during construction and local patronage once the dwellings are occupied. Harms such as landscape change and additional traffic are considered limited and adequately mitigated. Applying the tilted balance, the tilted balance, the benefits of the development clearly outweigh, in officer's view, these adverse impacts. So in conclusion, the proposal would not result in significant and unacceptable harm. The adverse impacts do not significantly, demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The full planning permission should therefore be granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Move on to public questions. I'm just going to double check again, is Melanie Lavender online at all at the moment? If not, we will move straight across. Okay, so we move across to the applicant, Jonathan Dodd, Law Homes.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. I'm just a lot quieter in here than earlier. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today about our application for the land north of Bradley Hill Lane. Our plan is to provide a sensitively designed, accessible and connected development, continuing our previous developments to the south of Bradley Hill Lane. The application is in detail for 56 homes, which following consultation feedback was reduced from 65 homes as per from the officer. The reduction in housing numbers facilitated an increased generous open space provision and a more sensitive landscaped edge to the site. The scheme will deliver a fully policy compliant affordable housing offer with 20 homes out of 56 as affordable. These will be offered social rent, shared ownership and a possibility of discounted market sale. We've worked collaboratively with officers at Somerset Council, and following their comments, we've made positive changes to the application proposals, including additional boundary plantings to the north of the site, more street trees, to create a greater sense of place and a greater dispersal of affordable homes throughout the development. Access will be from our existing Somerton Mead development with an extension to Maple Drive crossing Bradley Hill Lane. The new crossing was devised with early feedback from Somerset Highways and has been designed in a way to limit any potential antisocial driving or access for running onto Bradley Hill Lane while delivering safe access to and from the site. This will be achieved through new central islands at the crossing junction with raised curbs. These curbs would not impede the current usage of Bradley Hill Lane, preserving priority for its current usage and ensuring the route cannot become increasingly trafficked or used as an alternative access. This proposed access would not prevent or impede the delivery of any future vehicular links or improvements connected with Northfields via Bradley Hill Lane. In addition to the delivery of new homes, Raw Homes will positively work with Somerset Council to deliver Section 106 legal agreement that will provide contributions to highways improvements, a travel plan for future residents, early years and primary education provision in terms of financial contributions, and increases the physical capacity of existing surgeries and off-site sports provision. This application represents a deliverable scheme that, if approved, will be able to be immediately counted by officers towards the 5-year housing land supply. We stand ready and able to deliver with alacrity. By approving this application, you are delivering new homes in the right place, identifying direction for growth in a town considered sustainable, securing funding for community infrastructure now, assisting on housing land supply, and helping to prevent development in the wrong places. We respectfully ask for your support.
Okay, so we move to questions and points for clarification. I'll come first to Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of points on this. I think three main points I just want to pick up, and I think I'll deal with the easier ones first. So when it comes to flooding, I noticed that there's a pre-committal condition to deal with any flooding. I happen to know the area quite well. I happen to know that there is a bottleneck created by the school where the new school was put in, and literally the pipe isn't big enough to take the water through. On high flows, you can see that there is a difference in the height of the water. Unfortunately, what that is doing, it's making the bank back beyond it over top, and that's happening a couple of times a year. And I'm now getting a couple of houses on Northfield actually getting water ingressing regularly into their houses. But more significant than that is that actually it's diverting the water in a different direction. So long as the water flows down the ditch under the school, it then drops off effectively the cliff, the escarpment onto Somerton down into the floodplain. You don't need to worry about the water anymore. The minute it overtops that ditch, it runs back down Northfield, and it runs down into the existing drainage system of Somerton, which is already overwhelmed. So we are now adding water that never used to go into it at the very head of the system, adding to it being overwhelmed. So I think my question in regard to the pre-commission condition with this is, I think the bottleneck is clearly at the school. What rights or ability do we have to ask the developer to replace that pipe, because any extra drop of water going into that ditch from this development is going to make the problem far worse. So I think it's probably better to deal with each of my questions in turn. So that one first.
I mean, the question, as I understand, is replacing the pipe under the school that was placed there by the previous developer.
Yes.
Under previous development.
Yeah, by us. We built the school, didn't we?
Yeah. That doesn't form part of this scheme, and consulting with the LNFA, I'm not sure that particular issue was taken into consideration. Having said that, the wording of the condition does ask for detailed drawings and designs to come forward. I'm not sure to what extent that could be a consideration at that stage. But you know, in discharging this condition, the applicant would have to demonstrate that it's not going to cause flooding elsewhere downstream, and well, the whole approach to drainage within the scheme is to retain water on site by means of the attenuation basin and other attenuation tanks, and to release water from the site into local water courses and general system by achieving greenfield runoff rates. So the drainage in effect will be as if it is as it is now a green field. It's about attenuating and slowing down those flow rates so you don't cause the flooding elsewhere. But the full details of that is yet to be seen and considered by the flood authority.
If I could come back on that, it's all well and good to say that there is capacity in those ditches. With the local knowledge, there isn't. And absolutely, if that is not rebuilt, that culvert that goes underneath, you will be flowing water back down into the town. I just wanted to know what ability that we would have if that was seen as being an issue. Are we able to compel that work to be done? I know that is going to be what the bottleneck is. Yeah.
Can I just check, Councillor Kelly, what you're asking is for this development to be something that's probably the responsibility of this council. If this council has got piping under the school that is causing a problem with flooding, then I would assume, and I'll check technically, that it's probably this council that needs to rectify that problem.
If I just quickly come in, I think that's a nuanced argument to that. I think you're absolutely right. I think there can be absolutely no doubt that this development is going to increase the water that will go into that ditch. And it is absolutely beyond capacity. It's already overtopping already. So it is to mitigate what is happening with this development. There is a pre-existing problem there already. This is going to make it far worse. So I just wanted to clarify that, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify that the test for this application will be about the impact of the development proposed. So it's for the developer to come back to discharge a condition there to demonstrate that drainage could be adequately managed within the site and not exacerbating issues elsewhere. So they would have to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the high standards of the LFA that that could be achieved. So if that is indeed the case, then there would have to be a discussion about how that could be managed and addressed suitably. Otherwise, that condition would be able to be discharged.
I just, through you, Chair, I just worry about liabilities going forward. At the moment, we've got houses there flooding a couple of times a year because of the overtopping. At what point do we have any chance to enforce if we find that we build this out and those houses are now flooding 8 to 12 times?
I think it sounds like there's two issues. There's an issue with the management of the school, which we can take up separately, and then there's the issues of this planning application. So this planning application that we're looking at today is subject to the conditions as recommended. So they'd have to come in if there were issues with the school. And enforcement issues around their drainage scheme, and then we can look at that separately and raise that with the enforcement team. If it were to come to light that there were issues in implementing a subsequently approved drainage scheme, then that would also go to the enforcement team. But obviously we're not at that point at the moment. We're just at the point of these conditions. I hope that makes sense.
It does. I had hoped that was going to be my easy question as well. So if I just go on to my other very quick one, just a very quick one on archaeology. I noticed with the report we've got some standard conditions on there. I just wanted to make everybody aware that there was some nationally important significant finds when the school was built. So ancient, early British settlement, ground houses, all sorts of things like that. I suspect that archaeology will extend into those fields. And when I spoke to those archaeologists doing the work at the school, they also expected that it would extend into neighbouring. And I just wonder whether those conditions are strong enough, considering that that is a nationally significant archaeological site in the field next door. So, second question.
They're pretty standard conditions that there'd be a watching brief, and that's been attached in light of those findings on the adjacent site. As outlined in my report, I think there were 15 trenches that were dug, but findings were found in only 3 of them, I understand, and some of the findings were inconclusive. As a result of that, sort of precautionary approach might apply, and a watching brief, a condition for a written scheme of investigation, I should say, rather, a written scheme of investigation conditions applied, and that's a standard condition in these circumstances.
Okay, thank you. So now I'll come on to my third point. I think as a planning authority, over time, we've got ourselves in a bit of a pickle over this. Now I'm wondering whether we could put up a map showing the location, the wider one, including the location of the training estate and the wider road network. I think the first thing to say is when this, I'm interested, I've got a newspaper article up. I was quoted when the first stage of Bloor Homes came in, and I was quoted saying that we needed to make sure these roads were wide enough to future-proof the school. Now, with the first stage of Bloor Homes that came through, it was agreed that they would provide a pedestrian link into the school. The expectation was, in the second phase, they would then pay for a little bit of a dog link to join Bradley Hill Lane down to Northfield. Now, that was the expectation at the time. Since then, there has been some huge changes within Somerton, in part because of the phase one of this development. And this is beginning to cause some severe problems. So when we look up at the map, when the first Bloor Homes came in, which is just down to the right-hand side of the industrial estate, there were 3 points of access into the industrial estate. You could come down Cartway Lane, you could come up Bankham Road, and you could also come through a new road called Russet Road. Now, because of concerns of heavy traffic with the build out of the original phase one Bloor, it was agreed, and I've got, again, I can quote, £5,000 was paid by the town council to block up the east end of Bankham Road. That then reducing the number of entrances into our industrial estate down to 2. Unfortunately, we made a planning mistake in SSDC in when we made another estate nearby called Russet Road. We made the roads too small. That was the second link in from Somerton to the industrial estate. I'm afraid we had to do a TRO to close that road because of health and safety implications, and bollards were put down in that road. So my access into the trading estate has dropped, in part, one of them because of phase one of Bloor, from 3 access points to 1. What makes that particularly dangerous and serious is that I am having, for instance, and this is indicative rather than because there could be other reasons to close the road, I'm regularly getting flooding on Cartway Lane, and I'm getting phone calls at 2, 3, 4 in the morning where I have to go myself and take the liability myself to lift the bollards on Russet Road to allow those trapped in the industrial estate to be able to leave and get home. It's quite a regular occurrence that I'm having to do off my own back. I shouldn't be having to do it, and I've been put in a difficult position by this authority to do so. So, we have very limited room going up there, and I desperately need a second route for many different reasons into the trading estate. And this was supposed to provide that link. So when you go to the show house on the estate and you go in, I've got a photograph of which I didn't submit at the time, otherwise you'd have it up there. There is a map on the wall of the show house, and that shows the existing development, and it also shows an access point that goes through to Bradley Hill Lane that then connects the industrial estate to the rest of Somerton. That is missing. If you look at the red, I'm just going to quickly get up and show you on here. So that point would be just here, that would go through, there's an existing road, goes through and should link up, and that should be linked together. Now, there's no red, that's not included in this. Go back to my microphone. The problem is we've now enclosed that junction off. There is no ability for any other developer to come along and pay 106 money and now connect that to the rest of my system. So you now have an isolated trading estate. You have no ability to put a second road in to alleviate any of the problems to go with that. Further to that, the direction of development is westwards in Somerton. So it goes from the red box off to the left of the screen. And there are very few natural access roads to go up there, Bradley Hill Lane being only one of them. And with this scheme, we are putting almost a fortification across it, and stopping people from going up there permanently, and again, stopping any further development in the way of development, in the direction of development. There is a third point, and yeah, absolutely. So there is also so there was never a corridor survey done when the school went in. And I'm sorry that you did say question. It's really difficult for me to pick the question out without giving the background. So I do apologise for going on a little bit. There was never a corridor survey done when the school went in. And that's because of the circumstances when it went in. I can't think of another primary school that ever went in without a corridor survey. So we do not have a fair audit of what is going on those roads. I also have a very narrow pinch point on Northfield that leads up to the school with this single track, and this is the main access into the school with no pavements. The only way to alleviate that, which is going to kill a child at some point, was to have a second route in to the school, which this was supposed to provide. Yet we now see up on the map that this is not included. So I've had a chat with Alan about the highways issue, and it appears that we as a local authority have perhaps missed the significance of that junction. And I don't know whether Alan would want to come in and say anything, having had the discussion with him before, but I think that once we've heard from Alan, I might want to move to try and defer this, because I think we have some really difficult questions that really need to be answered, and a strategic, zoomed out view of this, I think really does need to be taken. Thank you, Chair.
So, trying not to be long headed, can you just paraphrase your question, Alan?
In light of the reduced options for solving the problems with the industrial estate and the school, what solutions could highways offer to those problems? I suspect I want to go on and think about it.
The assessment of this application, and yes, we've spoken about this in the past, we have to assess each planning application on its own merits. And I've said before that this particular site is providing a new link through from the original phases of the Bloor Homes developments to the northern side of Bradley Hill Lane, including the ability for pedestrians to come through those initial phases and get a better access to the primary school, especially those housing areas to the south and southwest of the area of Somerton, which will remove the pedestrian traffic from Northfields. It will give them a better route to access the school. Whilst I understand the point of accessing the commercial units to the west, you have to have one eye on the National Planning Policy Framework texts about what is within scale, what is reasonable. And on the back of basically 56 houses, trying to get a sort of wholesale amendment to Bradley Hill Lane or Brandon Road or whatever, we felt was out of scale and therefore would be unreasonable when considering the tests. I think the aspect of the flooding on Cartway, yes, I understand that is a concern if it's the only access in. However, I think that is an existing situation and therefore shouldn't be for this developer to have to solve it. If there is an issue with flooding down Cartway Lane because of a drainage system issue, then yes, perhaps getting the Legal Local Flood Authority involved and asking them to investigate the drainage systems in the area, or indeed our area highway office. Perhaps they might investigate the highway drainage in the area, if there's a blockage, if there's a pipe that needs cleaning that's causing the problem. But like I say, that's outside the sort of scope of this planning application, which is why I've said to you recently that I think from a highway authority point of view, accessing this site by both vehicular use and either pedestrian or cycling use through the existing Bloor Homes sites to the south. You've got an existing new junction onto the B Road. You've got, that was constructed in accordance with geometry, visibility, construction depths, whatever. So I understand the access issues towards the industrial units, but I don't think we can actually require anything more from this particular development site.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Seaman and then I'll come back.
Just to one quick thing you said there. Yeah, because I did say when we talk about Cartway Lane and the flooding, that was an indicative example. There are many other reasons that could result in Cartway Lane, car accident, fire, all sorts of things being blocked, and we still only have one entrance in and out, so it's not necessarily about the flooding. Thank you, Chairman.
Let's proceed.
So the short question, a little bit of background to it, the short question is, will the balancing pond be frequently wet, i.e. contain water or mud at the bottom? The reason I'm concerned about this goes to the actual core of the layout proposed. The play area has been placed off in one end. It's spotted by the play officer. There's no response to his commentary in your report. And clearly the applicant has not responded to it. Basically, you're asking all the kids to walk down a raised road with an area that's lower ground and possibly full of water off to one side. I'm assuming it'll be a level area for play for younger children, not a teenagers one. So you're expecting those who are just learning to be independent. They're not far from home. It's where you should be able to make your own way as a young child. Plus the mums and toddlers, the ones who find moving along. It's complicated with the buggy and the toddler and so on and so forth. You maybe walk a promontory, which is also the main road. I know there's a footway there, but nevertheless, they've got to walk away from the houses down to the play area. When very frequently, including in the earlier phase of the plot, you normally put the play area in the middle of it. So you come out to the garden onto the play area, albeit across a path or a driving road. It's a distance, it also involves crossing. So I want to know, is there a safety issue with this balancing pond because it is normally wet around there? And if not, how's it managed? Does it, are we planting through it? And I want to know more about the feature which is on the drawings but not clearly labelled, which seems to be a path across the road leading from the corner to the play area. Because obviously I'm concerned that, if you've got unsupervised small children mixing it with traffic and a water feature, things could go wrong.
Thank you, Councillor. Probably remiss of me. I've returned to this particular slide. If we look at the diagram to the left, at the extreme north is the local area of play for younger children. And the sort of oblong in green, so it will be away from that location. And just returning to that location, to the diagram on the right, the balancing pond will be wet at times. I think it will be a lot of the time it will be wet, but the attenuation pond has been so designed that it will provide a public open space area as well with seating and planting. It'll be a very attractive sort of feature for local people. And just returning to just your final point very, very quickly, with the locally equipped area of play on the other side of that road, as you've pointed out, there's a pedestrian route directly leading to it, and from there you can there's access to the primary school. I do take your point though; it's perhaps not in the most ideal location. That was something that was discussed with the applicant. We felt perhaps incorporating it within the development and might improve natural surveillance, for instance. However, from my previous photographs, you've seen the proximity to the development to the south of it, so the area will be overlooked. So we're satisfied that the area is satisfactorily surveilled, but it will be for the older children to use.
Chair, can I come back on that? By older children, we mean those who are just learning to be unsupervised and are making their own way to the play area. We are not talking 18-year-olds. we're talking 11-year-olds and 8-year-olds. And that's my issue. Is this a safe environment that you're creating? Because you've got a landscaping feature that may be wet on one side of a road, and you're asking kids to cross a road, which is actually on a corner. I'm not seeing comfort here that this is obviously safe, because, you know, they're coming in from the house in the upper part of the diagram on their own, along the road for perhaps unnecessary amount of distance, but they're on their own on the road. And I've also asked, you know, there is a feature across the road at the bottom of the radius there. I want to know what that is. Is that going to be something which makes me happy, or is you know, what is it?
Which feature is this?
So on the diagram that's behind the chairman, if you look at the right-hand diagram, if you go to the radius of the road at the bottom, pointing off at about 3:30, there is a linear feature across the road, halfway between the gateway into the equipped area for play, fenced area, and the pathway which leads around the back of it to the school, or to the
Right.
Show very clearly in the papers.
Right.
In the diagram of the site.
I believe that's perhaps an area to cross. It's I believe it appears to me to be a pavement or crossing area. Away from
it's a pavement across the road. That's what I'm trying to interpret. What is it?
I don't think it is a pavement. I don't think it'd be sensible to have a pavement across the road. But it does perhaps indicate. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, but I think it perhaps indicates a location where. I think it perhaps indicates a location where that would be crossed. Yes. But I'm not entirely certain what that linear thing is.
Can I just ask, is it on your surface plan? You showed earlier, is it showing there? We could potentially look at the plans as members continue the debate and come back with some clarification on that.
Are you happy while officers look at that, then we continue, Peter, is that okay?
My concern seems to tie in with others around here that, you know, we're not quite at the point where we know enough to make a safe decision. We can't rely on the NPPF to grant an unsafe design. I note that the crime and safety advice on this included information on lighting. You haven't got around to this, so, you know, again, I'm looking for year-round safety. So I would look to have lighting on areas where children might be crossing the road. I would look to have road features which control the speed. You know, if this is a traffic management feature, I want to know about it. I want to know that this is safe. And I'm afraid I'm not there. And I think we're in due for more information territory, Chairman.
Okay, I'm just going to go to Councillor Page. Councillor Page.
Thank you, Chair. My fellow councillors, Councillor Curley and Councillor Seep, have raised some of the issues that I've also had concerns about. I do think the Blore Homes actually have a good national reputation for being socially minded with their projects, and I do feel that maybe some more work with Somerset Council on this, with the planning team and the highways team, to maybe address some of these issues to do with, for me particularly, pedestrian safety, child safety, access to the school, but also access to the playground area. I agree with Councillor Seep. I just don't think some of these issues are clear enough, and I'm very concerned. I also know that area very well, how dangerous it is at the moment, and we're going to be building another 50+ houses, even more children trying to access the school the playground. None of us want to have the death of a child on our conscience. So I think we probably need some more detail before making a decision about this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curley.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I would want to propose that we defer this for a little bit more information. One of the key things that I would like to try and discover is if the law isn't going to provide this link, are we going to pay for it at Somerset Council? Is that a liability we are now taking on if the developer doesn't? So I think there are some questions that do need to be answered, and I would want to defer this, Chair.
Councillor Powell.
I'll second.
Before I take a vote on this, can I just say as part of that deferral that maybe a meeting between officers, myself as planning officer and the local ward members. So I think some of these items aren't necessarily linked to this application, but are going to have an impact. So maybe we can have a meeting if this is deferred to go through some of these before it. But there is a proposal for deferral on the table in a second. Did you want to come back on anything at all before I take a vote on that, Peter?
No, there's nothing I can come back on right now. Yeah, we'll see the clarification of the points raised by members.
I think it would be good to list so that you don't have to keep list exactly what you need exploring.
Yeah, I'd particularly like further clarification on Councillor Curley's.
Okay, can I suggest then, so we'll take a vote in a second, can I suggest that after this meeting or at the really early opportunity, we have a teams meeting between people, if that's the way it's going to go, to make sure that as officers, they know exactly what they're looking at. What I don't want to do is take a vote on this and then come back and find that we haven't covered all everything that needs covering. So I'll take a vote on this and then we'll come back.
Can I just say that, Chair? I think my colleague, Admiral Garland said it right, that it is beyond the scope of this application to deliver new infrastructure within the scheme is providing an acceptable access that officers support.
I agree, and I think that can be washed out.
I agree.
There's another communication to the grant. Yes, something hasn't been done, I should have done.
I don't think that's exactly what I was saying. I think that the phase one of law came in and we shut off one of the accesses to the industrial estate as a result of that development. And then a second access was then cut off, but for another reason. So it is material to this ongoing phase development, whether it isn't material to this part of the phasing, but absolutely to the entire development it is. And I just think we need some clarification of conversations over it.
Okay, thank you. So I've got a proposal to defer the application and a seconder. Can I have a show of hands for all of those in favour of that deferral?
Was that hand up?
Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Eight for those against. One, any abstentions? No. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, members, for that. We've already covered the appeals decisions. So I will close the meeting and see what again next month. If I can just hang on to Councillor Curley and Councillor Page, just so we can just have a quick conversation with Peter. Thank you very much.